welcome back, guys. Welcome to Friday evening stream here on my new channel. Compared to Twitch, we're here on YouTube now for just the foreseeable future. Just set up that focus there. Cool. We're episode 3 along in our traditional fan art series. We're working on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Mikey, this is the second one I've done actually. This is alcohol markers and wax color pencils on some Strathmore toned grey paper. It's only a bit over 100 GSM. It's a thin paper, but it's actually worked out really well. So we're just going to do a quick recap of the first 2 episodes, which we're not going to watch them. We're not going to watch a cut thing. I'm just going to tell you just briefly. You can see where we're up to. If you haven't caught the first 2 episodes, they're on the live playlist. If you want to look over 7 hours of working on this guy from the marker stage. So all this here is marker under the arm. So we've done this upper section here so far. If this is not done, if it looks inconsistent, that's because it's incomplete. Not to mention an overall quality pass once we're done. But firstly, we got some Strathmore toned grey paper. It is thin. It's not really your mixed media paper. However, I found with alcohol markers, I'm using Copics. There are other brands that are just as useful and good and cheaper, but try them out for yourself. All my resources for today is in the description, except for the Strathmore paper. But if you look up toned grey paper or Strathmore paper, you'll be fine. You'll find it. It's this one here. You notice anytime you reach for something in the studio, it's at the tip of your finger and you can't actually reach it until you cause yourself a massive cramp in your left shoulder. This one here with the really impressed, the girl that's on the front that's really impressed with being drawn. Toned grey. So that's what we're using. It is way down at 118 GSM. Most of the time, mixed media paper should be around about the 300 GSM. That's a weight, but I wouldn't use watercolor for this. I would use either this or a toned. Hang on a second. Let's skip a song. Either this or a thicker white sequential art paper used for comic book art or mixed media. I wouldn't say watercolor paper unless you're doing, I think, hot pressed, in case you want to do like a watercolor paint base, or using pencils as well and that kind of thing, because I think the cold press or cold rolled is a bit more it's more absorbent and more toothy and softer on the surface, and it's not good for pencils, but I could be wrong. But if you get this or mixed media paper or 300 GSM comic art paper, you'll be fine. I've just like tacked that down onto the cheap bamboo easel that I got for this type of thing, to stop it from warping. The alcohol dries up pretty quickly. If you don't put too much on to get started, you'll be fine. All I've done in the second stage, so the first stage, all I did was get my sketch on. You don't need to be a drawer to do coloring. So if you want to do colored fan art, you can do a sketch over top of, or a line art drawing over top of a photograph of the actor, of the character, of the figurine. This was a drawer of the figurine that is very similar to the movie character from NECA Figurines, which is really cool. So we're not focusing on drawing. We're acting as the person, the colorist, who comes in after the penciler or the inker, or the original sketch, to work on the color application. So it's a light version of this whole thing. You don't need if you want to be a colorist and a traditional artist of this type, you just need to work with whoever is giving you the sketch, or if you're supplying the sketch, you can get it from the sources, from the OG sources. I would just recommend not using other people's artwork as a source image, because you want to build this type of thing is all about applying a few basic techniques that get really good results. It's not necessarily copying an artist, it's just applying the pencils and the markers with techniques. You get this result. You don't really need to look at anyone, but you do have my work, so I guess that's an example of the quality of the finish. The techniques that I use, hence the subtitle, the Osmosis method, is what makes mine look this way, because I don't just shade in the colors. I actually use different micro techniques in order to create the texture of all the different surfaces on a character, such as the shell and the skin and the arm pad and the bandana and all the rest. The shell, and they're actually not a great big catalog of textures that I have in my head. It just comes down to one buzzword that you can remember, that you can take with you throughout the process of drawing that, and it's just something to sort of rope you in from saying, well, any treatment, any application of the pencil will get the result. Or even, you don't even have to really think about the anatomy of each of these parts. You just have to think about that buzzword that I call a stance, which is your basic mindset and position on what hand technique or drawing technique that you're going to use, and repeat over and over again on a certain part of the character in order to get that effect. And then I'll also just share and talk over as I'm going along. I'll share what I'm thinking, what I'm doing. I've been doing this for a few years now. This is fan art, so we're not really creating... I've created... There's Donatello there, it's the first one. We're not really creating new characters in this. It's a fan art, so it doesn't bother me at all that we're using the Jim Henson costume from the 1990 Turtles. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. All I'm doing is appreciating someone's costume design and the movie, and also Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman's creation of the Ninja Turtles, and doing something that I love because I like the characters. We're not creating a business model. We're not trying to reinvent the character at all. We're just applying ourselves to something that we like. So if that's for you, this is for you. Get your liquids. I realize US is only waking up at the moment, at the earliest on the East Coast. So the video will be available to you after, so I leave the live up. Okay, so there's two stages. There is what you're seeing here is two stages. So we've got the sketch down. I have the sketch here, so I just want to make sure that you're caught up and that you have what I have. My iPad is just going to connect. I'm just going to connect my iPad. 1 second. It is live streaming to my 4K Elgato. There it is, connected. All right. Okay, that's the sketch. There, it's on Procreate. It's a digital sketch, just using Procreate. This is an A4 template at 300 DPI. So make the bigger, at least 300 DPI. That way, when you print it onto your paper, this is if you're using the digital application, the pencil marks or the ink marks aren't too pixelated, right? You just want clean lines. You want what you've drawn to go onto the paper. I would just set I would recommend setting your ink, once you've drawn it in black, I'd recommend setting it to 50% opacity, just because when you print it out, you ultimately, you don't want the lines to come through. You could do, but it's just that your pencil and your markers are gonna cover it up. And even if you want the line art to come through, they're gonna disappear anyway. So if you want this to have a cartoon or a comic book look to it with black line work on it, you'll have to do that later or after using an appropriate ink brush or a liner or something like that. For this guy here, all I got was, let's get that menu back, was a photograph of a figurine, just because there's a few more production photos of the 1990 Turtle Michelangelo from this than there are the film. However, the film probably have a few options as well. For some reason, I did Donatello. I took a photo. I posed my Donatello figurine on the table with some blue cool light at the back and some warm light or neutral light at the front, and I took a photo of it. I put it into Procreate. I traced over the image, and then I printed that out onto this paper here. It's the same thing I did with Michelangelo, except that I found a studio shot from one of the online stores. I think it was something like that. So that's just, and as you can see, the photo has joints in it because it's a figurine. So I just didn't draw those joints in, unless you want to draw a figurine, which is kind of cool. I might actually eventually get around to drawing G.I. Joes with the joints still in them. So, but I wouldn't draw them like the 80s and 90s figurines. I would draw them a bit more like the current release ones, but make them look more like the Jim Henson. So real, but then a little plasticky, maybe a little shiny real, and then got the, leave the joints in. I think that, to me, that's the real enjoyment, whereas these guys appeared real to me in the movie, whereas G.I. Joe's more came, even though they're in the cartoon, I appreciated the live action film, actually, I think, for a longer period of time than anything else released on Ninja Turtles. Alright, so that's the, sorry guys, I've just got reflux. It's a, what do you call it? Heretical? I was going to say, inherited flaw in my system. Alright, so that's my reference. I got my reference up. And you just want to have that near you, whether it's a printout or your phone or something close by. And I would recommend, like I said before, I would recommend like doing a, what have I got here? I mean, this is Ghost in the Shell. I did this a while ago, right? So I'm recommending that you use a real cosplay actor, a real figurine. Figurines are great because sometimes, like movie interpretations of characters, the live version of an animated character you like or whatever, it just doesn't, they just couldn't do the same thing with the real actor that they could do with the animated. It's not quite the same. Then go for the figurine, because then you can do custom lighting. And then the other thing too is, I think you'll enjoy the custom lighting. You grab like a torch and like a lighter, or probably don't use a lighter, or your mobile, your smartphone or something, or an LED of some sort, and you set up this little fake studio just to create the right lighting, or some interesting rim lighting, a splash of red, some blue glow here, some underlit Tarantino briefcase treasure thing. Whatever you like, just try some stuff out. But I would recommend figurine, model, production stills, live photography, snips, screenshots from the movie or something like that. Something that shows that what you're attempting to draw was or is a tangible, real thing. Because we're talking about lighting, and this is why my guy here is a little bit more interesting, because of the lighting. Like you'll see when we get into it, like a lot of these little textures and techniques around here make it a lot more dynamic. And we're talking about all that texture that's in his details have more life in them as a result of the lighting, and that's what you'll get if you do fan art based on figurines or naturalistic or live or real tangible physical references. If I take something like the Major here from Ghost in the Shell, Kusanagi, and I try to draw fan art of that fan art, it's like someone hearing a story from someone else and then telling you, and who knows what's real anymore. Like, because the original Kusanagi doesn't look like that. That's a Scarlett Johansson original anime mashup of features that I've put together. So I've taken both the live movie and the original animated movie, and I put them together into a character of a connect, you know, a mashup of those two characters there, because I equally like both films. So that's enough reinventing of that wheel. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to do fan art of Major based on top of that interpretation. I could do more of that mashup, but then to just trace over that and then do other, like, if I did it, it's okay because it's my art. But if you're doing it of someone else's art, you're missing out on getting real lighting, original real lighting, and creating your own lighting. So just a word of advice there. It's going to be better for you to base your fan art off of real stuff just get it straight from the source. Don't you can use other people's advice like what I'm giving you now, but go straight to the source. All right, I'm going to keep that reference off to the side because you don't need to see it. We'll chip into it every now and then just so you can compare. We can compare notes. All right, so we've got your paper, we've got your sketch, we've got your reference / sketch. It's going to be the same thing. You got your reference by your side. Then you can take a Copic marker or another brand that you trust that the colors feel like they're doing a great job. You can get used to them, that they blend well, and they're not too... you can tell if there's way too much alcohol in it, if the color tends to disappear, and the color goes around the outside and the inside is all like lighter. Then if you put like a stroke on the page and then through the middle of the stroke or at the top of the stroke, if your drawing's facing downhill like this, you notice that it's very weak and runny. That's a marker that has too much alcohol and not enough pigment in it. But the Copics obviously are one of the gold standards for alcohol markers, and one of the things that the two things that they do is that they apply the color really well and they evaporate nicely. It's a very good balance, which means that this paper isn't going to warp too much. So if you want to do this thin toned paper, which makes color stand out a lot more, then you're going to be fine. If you go with the thicker paper, you can really apply yourself a bit more if you want to do more layers of marker. And all I've done is gone over my drawing where, like, put down a very light green where his base color is. So I've got a light green there. I've got another couple of... I probably bought $300 worth of these markers in total. I don't have a huge set of them. I've got 2 pencil cases worth. So I put down the light green. I might have done some of that mid-tone there and some forest green. I'm going to do Copic markers like I've got here up where these pencil things. I'm going to do Copic markers, I think, one day, and I'll just put them... I'll put the edge like this, I think. And I'll just do a little illustration where the Copic marker goes... and it shows you the little code and the name on the end there. It'll just take me a little while to do. I kept on talking about it, but I haven't done it because I keep forgetting. And all I've done with the markers is I've just used several layers of the light green and the mid-tone green, a little bit of dark, and then again for the brown, maybe 3 different browns, so like beige, beige a couple of times, or beige, a light brown, and then a darker brown. And that all I've done is just help sort of take visual notes, follow the anatomy and the volume around to create, let me just zoom you out here a little bit. I've got the microphone always has to contend with the art. Let me just put the microphone up for a second. You don't really need to see the face right now. And let me just I'll fix that focus up. There we go. Cool. So you can see all the way down to the legs here, and also the what do you call that? The nunchucks and the shell, and at the front here, and the belt. And it's very simple. It's just almost like cell shading, really. It's not. So that'd be enough for some people. They go, "Hey, cool, I'm happy, but print it." You know, whatever suits you. But the reason why I learned to put markers down is that it forms a really good foundation for putting color on, and it's smoother. The paper is a little different, a little smoother. You might not be able to feel much of the difference at all. But when you put the pencil down, the difference between putting pencil down on raw, dry paper, regardless of how smooth or toothy it is, it's always better when you put the color down on top of colored marker. Or even if you're doing grayscale marker, alcohol marker going down the page, it's like, yeah, it's like, you know, like when some guys, they'll spray an area with a bit of water before they, you know, put a cement or concrete slab down. You know, it just, there's just a priming process in there that makes it better, and it really sort of lifts the game. So that was good, and that's all. And so I've done. I put this down. So obviously it just follows the lighting that I've seen in. I took some of these, drew some of these lines into the original sketch, and then other than that, I just looked at the reference image just to, so okay, there's the shadows on the knee, under the knees and the knee pads, and the shadows on this side, and there's a bit of opportunity for some bounce lighting on the inside, etc, etc. Big shadow up under here. It just gives you an idea of the real lighting, and that's what makes a real big difference, as I said earlier. And I've made sure I've sort of captured, blocked out that stuff. And then we applied the pencils. So instead of me talking you through a recap of the pencils, we're just going to continue on from where we left off. Alright, so we're gonna start in the shell underneath here. I think this setup ain't too bad, but I'm gonna get the camera in just a little bit closer, because I think the LA, you wanna rotate for me, buddy? Here we go. I think we want to get a little bit of what we've done in already, so we can see the progression. Cool, that looks pretty accurate. And I will very carefully move the microphone so it doesn't fight. Alright, so I've got a bunch of Prismacolors. They are mentioned up the top here. That orange, I do have that orange, but I'm using a mineral orange here because I've got a whole mixture of pencils that are all sitting down here, which you might have seen. It's all these pencils here just sitting here on my easel. Get that mouse out the way, take a slurp. And let's get into it. Alright, so there's a shadow under the arm here, being projected by the arm down onto the shell. This is a great opportunity because it is going to help lift that arm away from the body in its sketch form a little bit. So I noticed how there's some good depth here, but based off of what we do down underneath on the shell, it's really going to give us an opportunity to lift that arm off the body from the earlier marker sketch. I'm just going to go across both shells at the same time while I'm above it, because I'm in that same sort of mindset. Sometimes, like, the longer you draw in one sitting, the more chances you have of your work being a little inconsistent, particularly once you start to get to the 3 hour mark. So we'll tap out around the 3 hour mark. There have been a couple of cases where I've gone over 5 or 6 hours. I think one over 7 hours back in the day. So I'm just using some orange mineral here, and I'm holding the pencil way back here and holding it way over in the side, because that is the stance, registered trademark, that I wanted to use for this part of the shell. I call it a surfboard waxing, that stance. So you come up with a name for the type of stroke you're going to do, that you feel is going to treat the paper with the movement of the pencil in a particular way. I don't color in all my stuff this way, only now because I'm looking at the reference image going, well, his shell is kind of, it looks like a polished waxed surfboard, a little rough, a little satin, a little glossy, a little matte in places, a little dirty. So I'm going to use that technique because that's what's going to emulate that treatment. I'm going to keep on doing it. There are other cases where I'll rotate the pencil up onto its end, and I'll do little scratchy strokes in here that I might refer to as the stance of that being referred to as scratching, or even just regular hatching taken from comic book art. And I'm just gonna surfboard wax this in, and it will, because it's leaned over so far, it's gonna pick up the texture and the highs and lows of the wax I've already put down. So it's gonna have a little bit of texture to it, just naturally, randomly, of its own accord. And that's what I want. I want something that looks organic, and something that has sort of come about like subjectively based off of its weathering and whatever he's been like roughing himself into. Here's a turtle. I'm just seeing an opportunity over here, just where, I don't know if it's just the curvature of the shell or something, just under the elbow here, just a slightly darker point. I'm avoiding getting too heavy, because one, I don't want to break the pencil. Prismacolors are some of the best color. They're very smooth and a little bit soft. They can break quite easily, but if you just go and you build up very gradually, you can get some really nice color down. Alright, I'm going to switch over to the dark brown in a second to get that to lift a bit more. That was a sienna brown. I don't have chocolate brown on me. I do have this, this is a Caran d'Ache Super Color 2 Soft, which is a student budget version of their extended series, and they are good. They're harder and drier, but they still have great color, so they're good for definition. And they can be a little sharp, so you got to be careful, like, not to use the pressure that you might use for blending in that process. You want to make sure that you take your time with it, but they're good for sharp lines and detail in particular. So you might get some, like the guy that was selling me higher quality, higher end Pablo's Caran d'Ache brand, they were referring to, oh yeah, the super colors just give student level quality stuff, you know. And I'm like, well, they're still more expensive than Prisma, and they're still really good. Like, so I'm interested to find out what luminants are like. They're super expensive pencils. Alright, there's a bit of a... I think this is the forearm shape that's in here as well, a little bit. Just coming across this way, and I'm getting some ribbing and some cracking and stuff in that texture. I did skip the... what did I apply before? Oh yeah, the sienna brown. So I'm just going to pick up the sienna brown again. Should have done it on this side, a full pass. And there, his hand is quite close to the shell on this side. It's casting a shadow. Right, just checking my lighting reference here. So diminishing returns down here, sort of falling away. Still a little balanced out. It's good to verbalize what you're doing, if you can. Alright, so he's up, that side's up to spec. Go back to our dark brown and just bring that up to the contrast, the level of contrast that I would like to see. Obviously the real lighting in the reference image is giving me excellent idea of what it's really doing, which makes the character look real, or it gives it its best shot. Alright, now I can still blend what's there in. I found like when you get darker and darker, you are putting more colors on top, but it feels like the darker the pencil get, the drier it is for some reason, or chalkier or something. It's not always the case, but if I come back now with one of the base colors here, which is yellow ochre, it's not until I get the yellow ochre going over top of the 3 shades that I've just put on, the orange mineral orange, the sienna brown, and the dark brown. It's not until I put this yellow ochre, oh that's right, it's got a bent, broken, ready to break off tip on it. It's not until I put this yellow ochre down that it doesn't start to all sort of blend together and filter and make it look like a published piece of art. And this I don't know why, but you bring the base color back in and it's like, all right, let's prep this for broadcast. Let's make this look really smooth and like it's all one piece of art instead of smooth and chalky results. And as you can see, you should be able to see there, it does lighten it up a little bit. We can continue adjusting, but this base color here has smoothed out the finish of that versus the little dryness of the untouched side there. So we'll come through. And I'm still using the pencil sort of leaned over like this. If I was his size, I'd be like, if I was shrunk down to like 7 inches here, I'd literally just have just a block of colored surfboard wax in my hand and I'd be scrubbing over it like a surfboard to blend a bit more of the base color into the shadow work there. And I just recommend having a cheap synthetic brush to brush away the crumbs as you're going, because using your hand to wipe away color crumbs will turn your hand into a paintbrush. If you're not too worried about getting dirty, it will actually drag all the crumbs across everything else, and it will continue to lift or recolor the work that you've done, and also reduce the quality and the detail that's in there. So I would recommend that you use a synthetic brush. You just hold it in your left hand and your pencil in your right hand, and you can just do that, or just hold it like this off to one side. Just depends on on how you feel comfortable for the haul. All right, so there's a bit of a glow on here. So I'm just holding it upright a bit further because you get diminishing returns. When the more wax, the more color is on the page, the less you can put down on top of it because it becomes quite stubborn. I mean, I could lean into this right now and just drag that pencil through there, and it would scratch up and mark and draw a big sort of yellow line through it. So you can push through it, but when you're treating it very finely, like a fine piece of fine art, your goal is to bring, sorry, your mode. Your temperament is to bring things in finely, like you're doing fine art, so be fine about it. You know, take your time and be cautious and let the colors build up over a few strokes. Don't try and hit that thing right off the get-go. Don't try to get that exact color in your stroke on the page straight up, because you might just annihilate your work. Or the pencil. Or do what I call waxing. I know I'm using the term surfboard wax, but that's just the stance. That's just the mental image I'm using when I'm using the hand technique there. Waxing, I call, is when you put so much wax pencil on the page that it becomes polished and smooth and very difficult to work with. It's fine if that's the end result, although I try to avoid over polishing the page as well, because it reflects light, and you don't really want your artwork to reflect ambient lighting in the room, because that you want the art itself to be visible, not the rest of the room and the office lighting or whatever to be doing that. So once again, I'm just checking my reference, start and finish with the reference, and now I've got the pencil up just a little higher, a little sharper, just so that I can angle in those last few details. Where and because I've gone easy on the whole process so far, now when I come in and do a bit of sharper, higher end work on some areas, it listens to me, because it's like, okay, now I'm going to mean a bit more business, get ready, and it's like, yeah, you've been kind to us so far. Happy for you to make some, you know, more refined decisions towards the end there. Alright, just getting some reflection here off the side of the shell and just blending that in, because the reference art is telling me that the line's a bit blurred there. I'll just disable my sketch over the top of that, because it's cutting right through that. I can probably get things a little bit darker again at the extremity, so at the high point of the arm, so just a bit closer up towards the arm. I'm just going to get a little bit more savvy with the darker pencil. Cool. And then if I want to get darker again, I'll just teach you a little bit about the application for those who haven't seen that yet. I talk about it every time, or each time we're doing color, I include a bit of color theory. But instead of going from the dark brown up there to the black, I'm going from the dark brown to the Dahlia purple. I do have black grape, but it's not on my table here. The reason why I'm going to Dahlia purple is because it, in the combination of the brown and that's already under, or that's already on the page, it actually creates a colored, saturated shadow that is more interesting to look at. It's still got a bit of color and some taste in the way it comes together. However, if I wanted it to be a bit dry, or a bit starker, a bit more monochromatic, less flavor, less saturation, I would use the black, because the black will make it darker, but it will also mix in a color that has no other tonal values to it. So what it does is actually kind of strips the color out of whatever you're trying to make darker on the page. So just remember that while black is a very dark color, it is not always the best option to use when you are wanting to make something darker. Look at your complementary colors. Look at the opposite color in a darker shade, and then, get a piece of paper off to the side and just do some blending. Blend your colors on a scrap piece of paper just to see what it gets. Now, what I will do though up here is I will get a bit of black, but only just to do a bit of lining. There we go. So it's just the kind of extreme point of some of the hand there, and that where it just sort of cuts away from any available light, and just help outline it. And I'm just being careful not to go too hard in this, because I'm not going for a cell shaded cartoon sort of look, or an inked sort of finish. I'm just bringing in just a little bit just to create some definition and separate the green from the midtones of that green from the midtones of that shell, which are very similar shade but just different tones. Not too bad. I might just add just a bit more. So we'll go back to the beginning. So mineral orange just up here. Just sort of dull that down a little bit, and then some sienna. I just want to bring up that light that's there. I think it's just a bit much. This is going to be a bit more light down the bottom. So just again up close to the arm where that is. So you don't have to remember how I'm shading Michelangelo here. It's the techniques. It's just the application of the pencil. Once you've got your sketch down from wherever you fetch it from, preferably a photo of a figurine with your own lighting, or if you know one of the original actors, who, if they have the original costume, ask them to come on around, buy them pizza, take some photos with your own lighting. That would be the ultimate. There we go. All right, that's looking all right. I could see a little opportunity here if I grab maybe the white. It's quite sharp. I'm just going to put just a tiny bit right there in the middle of the shell, just on the edge there, just as just a little bit of, I'm negotiating some sort of exposure. And you'll notice too, if you do just a little bit of stippling, just like that. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Is do a little bit of stippling over the dark areas, and what it gets is like this translucency to it. Sort of did it up here, where it's kind of got like this really thin clear layer over top of a very hard matte sort of shell. Try it out. And I might do a similar thing, but with a bit of beige. But just over here, I'm just going to do just a little like scrubby circular sort of, just to add just a little texture of light, where a little bit of texture where the high point is. You might not see much of it on the camera, but this is just something that might improve your first-hand experience of your art. So making the original even more interesting. The original is where the real equity is in your art. Is having in a traditional it's obviously having the like that finished piece, the traditional original finished piece, as an investment and as a keepsake or as a legacy. And you can put things, the finer detail that, you know, don't worry about the rest of the world, and don't worry about how it gets JPEG'd and JPEG'd after JPEG'd and sent and shared around. One of the things I learned with Frazetta, he's a mass redistributed artist, because people are learning so much from him, and he does such, you know, cool art to look at. But you have to buy the painting, or the next best, which is a fortune, or the next best thing, which is the Fantastic Worlds of Frank Frazetta, which is this massive book put out by his granddaughter through a absolute incredibly well done publishing company, I think in Italy, to actually see original photographs of the art with no shine on the, you know, obviously, or original scans of the original art, you know, really good captures of the original art, showing qualities of Frazetta's art that you will never see in redistributed JPEGs and other, you know, lossless or lossy forms that are on the internet. So the quality and effort that you put into traditional art is something that will last. I mean, as long as it doesn't get thrown out or burnt, and it survives and it's passed on. You're looking at some really valuable gold nuggets that people can see when they look at your art and enjoy it. All right, I'm just looking at the reference and seeing what I can get out of my opportunities here. This is a little greener and a little harder to see. Just add a bit of green and some dahlia purple here again, and that's just going to create like a vibrant dark brown and bring that back. Cool. Now we have pretty much this whole top section here except for this arm. I should be able to get today's stream, should be able to get the other arm done. And the belt. We'll see. Maybe we just do the belt just to change up the materials. So we got some leather here. Have a look back at the reference again. Is not a lot going on. However, it's also a little deceptive, so you might just go, oh, it's dark brown. There's actually more to it than that. There's dark brown, there's sienna brown. You could use mineral orange again, and some yellow ochre on the lit side over here, on this side. And then there's obviously the little silver, what do they call them, the studs, like where they, I forget what they call them. So basically bolts, one-way bolts on, clip-on thing. And then on this side over here, it's mixed in with blues, which is what I've done up here on the skin and the shell and that. So we're going to mix the brown with the blue, and then maybe even just look for some opportunities like we've done up here. So a little bit of, this has got a bit of, what's it called? Poppy red. It's like half orange, half red, on this side, to give it a little richness to it, and some contrast in the color, not just contrast in the shade. So we'll start off, I reckon, with sienna brown. I sometimes start off with, I'm going to go on the front here, and I'm just going to do like a sketchy sort of rough, hold the pencil back a bit further, and some squiggles and stuff. There is another technique, I forget what it's called. There's a Italian word for it. I think it's Italian, from a painter, old master's painting, where you can actually etch. You scrub the pencil into the page. They would do this with paint, except that they just created thick paint on a page, and then they created a wash that goes over top of it and follows the it just obviously washes over. So if you've done Warhammer miniature painting, where you've painted a base color on, and then you've done a light wash over top, and it's gone into all the crevices and that, or a transparent wash, the same thing. So that was created hundreds of years ago, but they used really thick paint to create a texture in the page, in the canvas, and then you put an oiled down, a slightly watered down, like more transparent paint. Over top of that, and it just catches in the grooves. And they would often take a rag as well and wipe it off and let the paint catch in the groove. That is not something I'm going to do for this one. I have done it. If you see Nebula's portrait appear above me, I did it with her. I might have done it with someone else. If you see Cad Bane pop up as well, I did it with Cad Bane as well in some places. So basically, I scored the page very heavily with a very thin brand, VERI, thin Prismacolor, very thin pencil. And I did very tight little leather texture in the collar of Nebula's jacket, and then down onto the shoulder a bit as well. And then I did it in her skin tone as well, in her skin texture, sorry. And yeah, it looked real after I scrubbed over top of it with a lighter pencil. And the areas that I had drawn heavily into the paper and debossed the paper stayed dark, as in like there were shadows between each of those little circles. And we're talking like circles the size of a millimeter or two, little textures in the leather collar. You'll see it appear in the rotating gallery above me at some point. There it is. It's a bit hard to see actually. It's up there. I don't know. Oh yeah, no. Hang on a second. I've got Instagram. I'll just share it with you. Where are you, Nebula? Oh, I did not post her. That is interesting. Huh. Oh well. I do have Cad Bane though. Just trying to think where I did it. I think it was down around the face there. You see how the face, the lighting of the face and the texture of the face there looks quite like tangible, like it's like you're looking at the original image, not the actual JPEG of the image. So down around the nose and down around the lip, and then this jowl there and onto the chin and that. I've etched a debossed into the page with a hard pencil, and then I've done a skin texture stance, a technique with how I draw the skin, the chunks, like little portions of the skin, the pores in that, over top of it with lighter pencils, and let the shadows appear in the debossed areas. Yeah, and that's the result you get, and it looks like one of those, you know, like when people make those collages or whatever, where they use real materials and things to make people, but it's just people. Oh yeah, up on the brim of the hat there as well. There's a couple of really good stance techniques in there. So the brim of the hat uses a sharp colored pencil to do all the crevices in the leather band around the base of the crown, and then I just sort of lightly scribble sketch, you know, over top of it all the high points to shine it up. That was fun. And then the hat itself, the crown of the hat, looks like it's made out of what do they use? Is it rabbit hair or something that gets all matted together and turned, or wool or something, and then it gets turned into a material, a hard material, and pressed and condensed and pressed down. So it looks like the hat, and that was doing the markers underneath, and then doing this kind of swirly figure S, infinity loop, figure eight, woolly stance, where I was just sort of like doing figure eights over and over again, and lightly, and just finding my way around the surface, like as if I had my eyes closed. So getting heavier and darker shades around the shadowy parts there, and coming back with a lighter pencil and going over top. So it ended up looking super realistic. And you can get that on a full-size portrait. So if you look at that original, which is on my desk at work, it is full-size Cad Bane. It's the same size of his head, and all that detail is 1-to-1. So when you're looking at, or it's close to full size. So when you're doing it that scale compared to Michelangelo full figurine here, you're talking about those techniques really doubling down and adding a whole other level of detail and control. But it's the same techniques. You know, I can't really you know, you can only sharpen your pencil so much for this smaller, these smaller A4. Oops, drew off the thing. Portraits, or these full figure portraits. So, but it's still good to apply the stance. So this one here is actually not. It's not really much of a technique. It's literally just scrubbing, just your general shading. But I'm just doing some little, like I'm just holding the pencil up here and rotating it so that the shape, the sharpness of the pencil at the end, it just rotates and gives me different results while I'm doing it. I just call that scratchy, itchy and scratchy stance. So that's just. It just, so that's what I'm doing to this page, and all it does is it creates a randomized sort of textural thing. If I just shade it in like this, like a regular old school shading, you just get an approximately patterned sort of average default shading look, and that's not, I just don't do that anywhere, because he doesn't have that in the finish of any of his body parts. He doesn't have that. There's no regular shading. It's all texture. It's all turtle skin and leather and, you know, aged and weathered shell and aged leather and makeshift this and makeshift that. Got a little bit of occlusion here, so there's a line of occlusion, so it's a little bit darker at this point here, because the source of this light source from this side gets to a point where it disappears by that point, and the light source from this side can't do its job either, and you end up with a line of occlusion. There's another one just up around the shell there, where the source from this side is struggling to cover all the little turns and twists and reflect the light back into our eyes. It's bluish on this side. It's fairly blue. And I'm just itchy and scratchy my way through. Cool. I'm gonna bring, this is a bit early to be doing Dahlia purple, but I'm gonna bring a bit in now, and I'm just gonna lean it over and do this itchy and scratchy thing. Just because I want that line of occlusion to be dark enough for a start, and I'll catch it over here first before I do my work elsewhere, because I want to make sure that I don't wash them out. And I'm just going to add in just a little bit, just sort of randomly, a little bit of surfboard waxing, a little bit itchy scratchy, rotate the pencil over, because I just want to influence. I'm about to put some brown down, and I just want the brown to have some purple to mix into it once it goes in. What have we got here? I'm going to bring some sienna in again. I just don't want it getting too light though. Yeah, I think sienna is just a little too vibrant and saturated. So we've got a little bit in. And come back to dark brown, and that's going to mix in. I'm going to push down just a little bit more pressure on that one, and that's just going to mix in the blue, that sienna, the Dahlia purple, and it looks a little dry and a little chalky. I'm actually going to leave this edge over here opportunistic for some brighter blue, because I want that to have that rim lighting. Just a little etching there because of that shadow. Try and work some bounce lighting into that. If you've got some really nice sort of leathery, aged leather textures in there already, it's looking pretty good. To me, it looks a little dry, like there's wax builds up in, like, if you zoom in all the way to like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids kind of thing, you'd have all this kind of like used football field sort of look where there's just divots out of the wax that just go straight down to the page where the marker is on the page. And that's that dryness that at least I can see. I'm sure you can see a little bit of texture in there. It's quite fine. And I'm just going to use, not that color, I'm just going to use some sienna brown here, because it's like the lighter colors are better at blending. So I'm just going to do that. And you know what might be good actually as a mid-tone color to blend everything together is the blue, because it is a cool color, and blue lighting is on this side. So I think really what I'm learning here is that the mid-tone color for this side is not sienna brown, it's actually electric blue. Even though the belt is brown, it's being heavily influenced by the lighting that's on this side. So I'm just sort of scrubbing over top. I'm just surfboard waxing that, and from the camera's point of view, but definitely from my point of view, I can see that cool, that murky, I mean, blue and brown sort of produce like a greeny sort of color, but because it's not pure green and it looks like blue and brown mixed together, it looks like it's on this side of the body, and it looks like it's caught by that cool lighting. So to me, it's working. And I'm just going to go back over that line of occlusion with some Dahlia purple. Some dark brown, just to sort of adjust that tonal value. I just feel like the purple's great, but sometimes it doesn't sort of, it just goes a little too far. I just need, actually it's looking good. It's looking alright. So I'm going to go back to this non-photo blue that I have here as well, and I'm just going to scrub and rotate the pencil every stroke or two just to get the sharpest point, because at the moment it's going to get very stubborn up here, this part of the drawing where it's got a bit of wax on it already. Got some crumbs on the page there. And get them off with the synthetic brush. You can still get some crumb drag on going with that brush, but it's your best chance. Oh yeah, so there's some bounce lighting off that side. We'll just probably do just a couple of hatching, just classic single hatching strokes there. Scrub that purple in a little bit more, just to add a little bit of undulation texture in that. The other thing I said I was going to do yesterday was making sure that the belt had a rim. If you look at like Michael Donatello's above me, the belt has a rim at the top and the bottom. At some point I put that in. I think that is, no, my figurines are the 12th scale ones, or the 7-inch ones. So my reference image must be a 12th scale one as well. At some point, if you look at the actual figurines, they're like this, they're flat, but for some reason I put more detail in. So maybe at some point I looked at the movie model. The costume, maybe. Alright, I'm going to grab this blue slate, because I don't want to go to white yet. I'm going to use white very sparingly at the hottest point of the smallest part of any reflection, if that. Any other time I'm going to use color to create the highlights. And I'm just going to run this blue slate along the top here, very gradually, easy going, rotating the pencil to get back to the sharpest point. I'm going to skip this little dip here and come back up over here. Don't scrub for too long, because the longer you scrub in one area, it flattens the pencil out and it expands the area that you're trying to color. If you want a sharp line, don't stick around for too long. Like, and again down the bottom here, because what I'm trying to do is create a high point on the trim of the band, the belt, sorry. It's gonna sort of fade away. Have the light up there, rotating the pencil, getting the sharpest edge. Back up here, skip the dip a little bit. Okay, so there's two things you do. You do the mid-tone, the highlight. Then what you do is you grab a dark. I'm going to grab the black because there's already so much on here. The black is sharp enough. If I sharpen it anymore, it'll probably just break on me. And then just under that, I'm going to create a shadow. Even right across that dip there, right under it. And that's going to tell the eye that there is, the belt goes up, the face of the belt goes up, and then it dips in a little bit. And then we've got the rim at the top that that extruded bulging rim that's also casting a shadow back down onto the belt. And it's very straightforward. You put light next to dark and it says that there's a high point and a low point, and that's what you get. At the bottom here, because the light is sort of coming from the side and down, it's probably not going to catch much of a shadow here, or the rim is definitely not casting a shadow upwards in this case. So I'm going to put the black line under the bottom again, the same as I did the top, but this time it's still going to be under the trim. It's just not going to be on the inside of the belt. It's going to be at the bottom of the belt, because it's casting that's where it's casting a shadow. It doesn't cast a shadow up. This bulging rim along the edge of the belt is casting down. And then I'm going to do one more thing to help sort of grab that. Just do a little bit here for that bad boy, that little belt. We'll go through that, the whole belt, and we'll cover it. We'll cover it all. And there's just the edge of the belt there. I'll just do that much for now. Alright, so just to create somewhat of a dip in the belt there, you can just use a darker color that gradients just a little bit. I like some of the tension marks, the vertical tension marks that are in there. They look cool. That is looking okay. I might just leave it, hey? Just make sure that that doesn't catch too much there. There we go. That's looking okay. Let's leave it. Let's do the rest of the belt and get an overall look for what I call compositional support. So making sure that the rest of the belt, it all comes together approximately at the same time and gives us an idea of how to balance it out. So put a little bit of blue slate on the edge of that belt tip there just to catch the light. That'll probably be just about the last thing. Maybe this as well. I should probably do this after the base color, the brown or something, but that's alright. I'll use that. Got some crumbs there. Let's get rid of that. Hang on a second. Okay, just got to make sure I've. Oh, hello there. Everyone, this is Miel. Miel, it's Spanish for honey. Hello. Hello there. Not much room up here at the moment. This is how she likes to be patted. So she's staying here. What if I do this? If I start doing this? Hello. She's gonna move on. But if I do that, she'll stay. She likes the baby nappy patting thing, whereas the boy, she's 3.5, whereas the 1-year-old boy, he just likes man pats. And she'll just jump up here and interrupt us all. She's got a lot of personality, and she's pretty good. Thanks for the love. Yeah, I'm definitely passing it on. Unfortunately, her anus is facing the. Say hello. Say hello. Say hello. 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 She's like, why would I face that direction? This is the one that gets the patch. She's giving you a smooch, which is when she smooches the mic. That's for you guys and the camera. She's gonna. There goes the belt. Forget about it. Game over, everyone. Go home. Alright, she is moving on. You know, I think that's what I call talking business. So she's come to say hello, but also scratch the carpet up, but also tell me that, you know, biscuits might be in order. Because they eat their chum first, and then they get biscuits later. We just keeps them on the keeps them on the keen side, you know, the kind side. It really works. All right, let's get back to. I'm gonna go. I already put my scene. All right, so I've already put my sienna brown down. If you noticed before I did that itchy and scratchy sort of thing, I'm just gonna use some dark brown here to negotiate some of this shadowing. I should remember to stay sharp on this because I don't want it to become all hazy and lazy. That belt's looking a little rough, but it's all good. Oh, there's a bit of a shadow cast onto it as well from the hand, so it continues down from here. So we'll look at, so that's what I was talking about, compositional support. So the fact that we can see the shadow being cast from the hand onto the shell, the front here. I'm just going to do some regular shading. So this regular shading is good for when you just do it like this, it's good for maintaining whatever texture is already on the page and just adding color. So it's like putting some butter in the pan, but then when you throw other ingredients in stuff, it really starts to cook and create with that. This is just like putting something there. And then when you start to stir it in and mix it all in, that's when you start to get your real flavors come together, where you start to mix the other colors in. So yeah, there we go. There is a point in time that I actually just do regular shading, which is here for this purpose here. I'm just shading away from the darkest points. There's a high point here. Here we go. Just scrub in just a little bit of shadow there. You know, like I like a bit of asymmetry, or at least I'm trying to employ more of it in my work. And as you can see, there's purple on the page there. So I'm going to add in some dark brown because I need to add a couple more ingredients in. This is like adding some salt onto your pan now. I'm just going, all right, too much butter, now I need more salt. Like I've lost the mix there, but you have to build it up, so there's no fault here. It's just cool. It looked very purpley. I'm gonna bring in some reasoning. Look for your opportunities, such as your occlusion line. So just up here on the edge, just before the highlight of the bend, the highlights, the bends of the hardest point there, just below the bend. Just do the darkest part, right before the light, darkest before the night, the darkest before the light, darkest night before the dawn. And I'm just going to scrub. There's already texture in the page from when I first scored it with the sienna brown. So that's just there, and this compounds like everything that's on top of it. It's all mucking around with that original scoring. And I'm just mixing these colors in together just to get that together. Alright, I feel like I've mixed a whole bunch of colors in. into that. I've approximated exactly what it should look like. Tonally, I actually want a bit more highlighting on this side, so I'm gonna get a little bit dusty, a little bit tough on it there, scrub that in to get that shadow casting. There, cool. We'll spend a bit more time working on that. But I'm gonna reach for my black. I'll just touch up the sharpness just a little bit. It is already pretty sharp. And I'm gonna go super fine and just get the detail, the definition back. And if you're doing other forms of mixed media, like if you're doing a bit of acrylic and that, pencil is kind of like the tool in the bag of mixed media options that just goes, hey, if you need to sharpen things up a little bit, let me know. You know, if things get a little bit out of control, let me know. We'll just bring refinement into it. That's always the pro of a pencil, is that you're limited on colors and how the colors mix together. Whereas like with paint, you kind of have unlimited colors. You can constantly mix colors together to get an infinite amount of colors. It's a little painting is a little underappreciated, like exactly how powerful it is. But the definition you get from penciling is just absolutely remarkable. And time costly. I will correct myself a little bit there. Pencils will do a great job for mixed media. They can come in and really help you out, but you can actually get incredibly fine work on paint. So I'm not saying that paint can't do it. You can, and the reason why I know that is because of my experience with Warhammer miniatures, where it's incredibly fine. I actually have some here, guys. Like I've done. Just trying to reach. Here we go. Bit dusty. So you see the detail I'm putting in. Look at the size difference between these two guys. This is a. Oh, I forget the name of the Legion itself exactly, but it's a scavenger from Leagues of Votann scavenger kill team. And so he's the size of the end of my thumb there, and he actually has eyes. You probably can't even see them. They're small. They're smaller than the point of a pin. And there's a lot of little features on him that have all been attacked and brought in on there. These are decals on the shoulders, so it would be doable with one of the brushes, but the brushes that you use for these guys are insanely fine and time consuming as well. But paint does a very good deal. Here's another example of fine painting. This is the Grey Knight's Dreadnought, but up here he's got this shield with Grey Knight fighting a Chaos Demon, and that's a third of the size of my. It's half the size or about the size of my pinky nail. It's got some very fine detail in that as well. Paint all the lettering into that as well. Paint this little Demon Slayer band icon into his shin. So yeah, paint is. So I correct myself. I stand corrected. paint is really refined as well. I think generally if you look at old masters and that, and a lot of painters throughout history, nobody really paints much. Like, I don't think they're not really painting that small. You'll see very fine texture and that, but they're not generally painting that small. Whereas miniatures, they are, which is, you know, a newer form of art, right? During the past 30, 40 years. Not the past 100 or 400 years. I'm just going to put black in there because I don't actually want any light to get into it. Right. All of that's like, it's just on this bit here. Yeah, but pencils are good. So. If your mixed media, if your major mixed media process is using acrylic paint or airbrushing or something like that, you've got pencils to really help out in the refined areas if you lose a bit of definition. Or Warhammer kit, right? Those paints, you don't have to use their paints per se, but you know what I'm saying. If you want to get super fine, there are some options that will really help you out. Just gonna put a bit more yellow up on this side here. This guy here is sort of lost the plot. He's just all dark brick red brown kind of thing. It's not even what it needs to be. That pencil's almost broken. Bit of yellow because it's just a little bit more saturated, richer, vibrant. I grabbed that. I'm gonna grab this beige and sharpen it up, and if that doesn't work, we'll use white, and we're gonna create the rim that we created on the right side of the belt across the front. And why beige is just because it's a warm white, a warm highlight. So quite sharp. I'm just gonna rely on the sharpness to help me out. I'm not gonna push down, I'm just gonna scrub. Yeah, that's working. We're not going to use white because I think what this is doing is putting both color down and scrubbing off the color. I have a feeling it is doing a little bit of both. And last area. That worked quite well, I think. It's a little shadowy over here, a little dark. Somehow when I drew the line in there, I pushed too much on the black. I just went too hard, so I just need to tone that down a bit. It's getting there, right? That's the main thing. Alright, so same as I did before, I'm going to grab the black again and just skim underneath that highlight. And I'm going to go easy because it doesn't actually need to be as dark as the other side does. I don't need to put as much effort into it because it's not as dark, it's not as much in the shadow. And if I want it to sort of lift out a bit more, I can just add a little bit more weight to it. I feel the beige is just a little too strong all up, so I'm gonna render it a little bit. And I'm gonna use a little bit of, take a little bit of the liberty with the black in some spots there. And then it would probably just blend and smooth off some of that black with some Dahlia purple, just to like let it know that the color's the hero here, not shades. Exactly. Once again, I don't know why that music is just bouncing in rather than starting in. Alright, I'm going to just go to the Dahlia purple now. I'm just going to get it sharpen up a little bit. And then I'm just going to go back over some of that black area and just sort of blend it a little bit. I might need to go backwards and forwards just a couple of times. Because the purple's quite strong as well. Mm-hmm. I might do dark brown, because I feel like if I use sienna to smooth this over, it will go back to being too light again. Use a bit of dark brown there to reinforce that rim. Just desaturating a little bit of that purple, coming back to the base color. And then we'll finish that belt off by just toning down that rim, the trim with some sienna brown. I should think that should do it. And I'm just stroking over to up top of it, just taking it down just a notch there. It's just a little strong. Okay, I think that's working. Probably the only thing I would just go back over again, which is like repeating my work a little bit, and that is just sketching in a fine black line where the actual like hardest point of the shadow is. For some of these that I just blurred with my tonal adjustment. And it's a little more difficult for me than usual doing this on a stream than it is just doing straight in person. So when I'm in person, I'll get straight onto the art up close in really nice clear lighting, and I don't have a camera and a microphone in front of me. But the process is to share. The idea is to share. Share the experience. Well, we can go in a number of different directions at the moment. We could fix up the shell just underneath, which is kind of like recapping on what we did just a hour ago. So we got our mineral orange. Just to check my reference again, the lighting is in this area here, sort of coming up off there. So I'm just gonna surfboard wax process again. Little sort of wax on, wax off. Mr. Miyagi. Bit of shadowing down around here, sort of the crotch sort of bends back in a little bit. I'm gonna just do a couple of different directional strokes, so some circular, some linear, some on the spot, backwards, forwards, just to like change it up a little bit. Because I'm just trying to bring in some organic sort of tones there. Off to our sienna brown. Check my shadowing mostly, because now that's we're trending away from the highlight, the lighting. We're trending towards the shadows, and I'm using the same technique. Again, I'm just randomizing the surfboard wax sort of scrubbing thing and finding my way around. Actually, it's a little bit like the technique you might do for chalk. Sorry, not chalk, charcoal. Probably chalk as well if you're doing I don't know what we do with chalk. I've never really... It's a long time since I used chalk. But charcoal, I've done a bit of that. Interesting medium. I've only done a little bit. I did a Rembrandt self-portrait, re-portrait in charcoal, just to try to work into that space of grisaille. So you do a charcoal realism drawing, obviously in charcoal, in black, and then you spray it with some clear, and so it all fixes it onto the page, some fixative, and then you trying to move that camera just a little bit to get that in there, and then you paint over top of that. Use it like a foundational sort of thing. I've seen someone do that as well, which is an interesting result. And this side sort of just curves around into the shadow. There's a lot of texture on the page already, so I can just sort of make sure I'm just really just building the tonal values and the rendering into what's already there. I don't have to worry too much about continuing to do very thought out surfboard waxing, although I'll probably do most of my my stance will be the same again. But yeah, you've got to understand that there's a certain point that there is a lot of wax on the page, and you're gonna have diminishing returns anyway. Okay, so I'm gonna grab a bit of electric blue up here just to bend that around. I'm gonna mix it in with the shell on the side and sort of blend it in and bend it around to that side, so it's telling us that it's getting the light from the right. I can grab a bit of Dahlia purple and then just work that into the point of occlusion there, just the shadowy sort of part between the cold light. And that, this type of purple is that, isn't it? It's between the cold and the warm. It's probably on the warm side. So now I've got this dry, gritty looking thing. You can see the difference between this polished surfaces here and that drier looking surface, and that's just what you get before you've gone back over it with the base color. So I'm going to use yellow ochre again. It will lighten the whole area a little bit, which is fine by me actually, because it's a little bit darker than what it should be as well. Copic markers do this as well, by the way. So if you put too much dark color down on your page, if you're doing your under drawing thing, and it's just looking a little too dark, you can actually bring a lighter shade of your colors back on And the higher, the lighter the shade of Copic marker, the more alcohol that's in the mix. Less pigment, more alcohol, which means it will thin down the pigment and the effect, and you'll actually lighten the darker marker tones with a... So yeah, I remember as a kid having, you know, some cheap school colored pencils that made me resent colored pencils for another 20 years, because there's nothing substantially interesting or vibrant or effective or blending or functional about them at all. And one thing I did know, that if you put a dark color down on the page, that's it. You're not going to change the paper's life with a lighter colored pencil. And there were no such things as white pencils, I think. I don't remember white pencils. I remember seeing white pencil when I got to university and just thinking, what are you gonna do with that? That's not gonna do anything. It's like when John Wick pulls a pencil out and you're like, what are you gonna do with the pencil? You're not gonna hurt me with a pencil. Then you're already dead. I think there might be different substances. I don't know what we used to use. I know what brand it is, and I'm not going to say it because I don't want to trash the brand, because they happen to do excellent colored pencils as well. Actually, the artist that inspired me was using a higher quality version of their colored pencils at one stage as well. Like, he was using a few, including these ones, and including the same brand that I used when I was a kid that was not designed for anything interesting. I'm going to bring a bit of orange in just to sort of warm it up. It's just got looking a little monochromatic. But yeah, in the world of professional coloring, or at least using this wax and Copic markers, they are very good at reducing the darkness of colors by thinning it out with alcohol, or just bringing a lighter pigment in over top of it, such as what I'm doing now, over top of the dark brown and the sienna brown and the or anything. It could be black and it would work, because that's just how these things apply. This is great. I ended up having to watch a tutorial on markers. It was a grayscale marker tutorial by David Finch on his channel. The link is in my description. Not the tutorial, but him. Actually, no, well, his name is in my description. You can check him out on here. He, with Eric Grove, I think, did a grayscale Batman each. I think that's what it was. And they showed you how you can use a lighter Copic marker in order to reduce the darkness, the darker pigments. By using a shade lighter or 2 shades lighter, you could get that result. I'm just going to use a bit of purple there on the side of the shell, and then I'm going to come back over to some... Actually, I think this blue is going to be too bright. I'm going to have oh, there, it's right there. Cerulean blue, that'll do. It's not even sharp, it's pretty round. Nope, too bright. I'll get some Copenhagen blue, which is more like a navy. Is that cerulean? Oh, here we go. Excellent. We got denim blue. I'm just going to put a little bit of denim blue down here around the leg. Sweep the leg with some of that. Bounce. I'm going to bring black in because I actually don't want it that bright, that light. I'm going to desaturate it with some black in a second, particularly up around here, under the belt, right at the back of the shell. It's just going to be invisible. Going to get a little business orientated here, a bit pointy. Music popping for some reason when it changes songs. Why? All right. Now it's very dry. It hasn't really sort of blended together. There is another thing you can do after you put pencil on. You can actually put Copic marker back on, but be warned, the alcohol in the Copic marker will water down the wax, kind of really loosen it up. It'll kind of become like a liquid wax pen. It's kind of a unique texture, and I used, if you see Golem up here above me, I use that technique on him, on his skin texture, and it creates an impressionistic blending sort of effect. If you want to try it out, like see what I mean, just put some wax pencil down on a page and then draw over top of it with some Copic markers, and it blends the wax together. It's actually a really cool effect. Just bear in mind, if the tonal quality, like when you look around at your artwork, if the shimmer or something changes or looks a little bit different, sometimes, I don't know what it is. Like if you put ink on top of wax, it ends up bluey, shiny. You know what I'm talking about? It looks kind of strange. So just keep in mind that when you're mixing different mediums together, if there's sort of some strange visual effects. I'm just using a Copic marker at 100% black here on top, and what it does. Generally, it gets very dark. It's like 100% black now. It actually kind of doesn't mind, because I've put Dahlia purple around this thing elsewhere. The kind of inky black ink, sort of purpley, sort of reflective behavior of it, you might actually see just a little bit there how it's reflecting the light and it looks a little purplish. It's actually working with it. It's not working against it, it's working for it. So it's not such a bad thing. And I'm just going to use some Dahlia purple. You can go back over it with the pencil, and that will kind of reset some of the texture or the shading. It will like matte down the effect again, but it's you're starting to get into a bit of chemistry that ends up being a bit kind of strange because it's a mix of stuff. I'm going to grab some poppy red here, and I'm going to run through the shell crevice there, because it has this vibrant lava rich ready sort of a look where Frazetta used this similar lava orange color in the shadows as well. You can see a bit of it there, and how it sort of glows a little bit under the circumstances. Let's go up and touch up some of this other area here, and it kind of just have like a little vibrance to it, which is asymmetric, tonally asymmetric compared to just being monochromatic. It's polychromatic, and it just looks a little nicer than just using just one straight color. I'm going to increase the curvature of this side over here according to the lighting and the anatomy of my reference image, which I can trust. In terms of the color of lighting and then how I use ambient, occlusion, lines of occlusion, like up here on this, it's not, the reference isn't quite like that. I've taken liberties with the amount of light that's in the scene, but the overall shape and anatomy of it and where the lighting is coming from is still referenced. It's still grabbed from what I'm seeing on the figurine from real life. So I'm including that realism, that form of realism. I think one way to say it is that when you want to get into realism, traditional fan art has a great deal of realism to it because you've got a physical, tangible, real piece of art here. So it's actually as close, aside from doing a sculpture, a full re-sculpture of someone, you've got something that's pretty real compared to, I know digital can look real, but there's an aspect of reality that a physical thing will have over digital. There are differences, right? There's differences between the two mediums, and that's just a note that has some aspect to it. So when I'm referencing the real, there is a certain amount of adoption that I'm bringing from a real reference to a real canvas for realism. That is you kind of have to follow real lighting if you want realism in your work. So, if that's what you're going for, you have to pay the price of a traditional physical real reference. You have to put that into your cauldron, into your bag of tools. I'm just adding a bit more darkness to this. So after we put that yellow ochre base color down a bit earlier, it did tone down a lot of the rendered anatomical componentry of it. So I'm still using my surfboard waxing technique here. On a micro level, it really does look like surfboard wax. It is the same sort of substance, it's just a different tolerance and obviously pigment. Yeah, there's some textures in the reference art as well, like it's quite dirty and quite gritty. So that's really working for us. Just gotta check a note here. Someone wants me to take a photo of some coffee. 1 second. 1 second. Alright, just had to pass on a photo of the coffee that I have for some reason. Alright. We have done everything except the arm. Have a looking for time. We have another hour to go. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so you can get a bit more of what's going on there. There we go. I'll just adjust the focus for you. Don't worry about that. Actually, it's not too bad. That's too blurry. That's not too bad. That's too blurry. That's pretty good. Let's just rock with that for now. It's a little richer in my view. That's a bit better. I'm just adjusting some of these. That's a little bit better, right? I hope. I've got a few little tweaks here that I'm using. That's probably that's a little bit more accurate, if that helps, guys. I think it does. All right, so let's start off with the shoulder and the bicep. So we're going to look at doing some skin tone here. So we're going to go back to stance, my stance method. I start off with a mid-tone color. I've got green apple here. Is that what it's called? It's called apple green. And I'm going to relatively sharp, not super sharp, because I'm going to sort of scrub this into the page a little bit. Not super hard, but it's going to get worked. So it's actually really dark here, much darker than what I've done it in. It's in very dark shadow up here in the crevice, and then all this is in shadow, and then that. So I just didn't add too much marker down because it didn't really need it. I was just going to finish it off in pencil. So long as it's been prepped and sort of outlined a bit, it helps when I look from the reference to here. I can see points of reference when I'm orienteering my way around. So the process I use for doing this texture here is that my stance is the letter C, but I'm going to do it a little backwards and mixed in with sort of stippling in that, because it's further away, the skin texture gets a little thinner than what's up here. So I'm literally, so the bump on his skin is like this dot here, right? So if you see the shadow on this side, this is a really good example. So I'm drawing that's the letter C, it's just backwards. That's exactly what I'm drawing, that shadow. So his skin is this, it's just bump, all back to back and very small. So I'm going to draw tiny little letter C's. You can't even sort of see them, but I'm using the gesture of it. This is my stance method. This is part of the Osmosis method that I don't color in, I technique in, I stance in. I use the stroke in the direction of the shadow, which is this tiny little curvature. Even the number 3 is like 2 reverse C's, so I should use my number 3 stance. Beep, 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 beep. And then just a little bit of dotting, stippling here and there, just to push it in, because it's so small, so far away, that the only way I can really sort of get the texture in is just to stipple a bit. So that added some color, it toned it down a little bit, because obviously the light green color that I used on the page marker was much less saturated and less everything. So that's just toned it a little bit, and it's added texture. I'm now going to use grass green a little further down where the shadow is, I'm keeping an eye on the... Let's sharpen that up. Keeping an eye on my reference. And what this is going to do is add in that froggy, toady, turtley texture with this stance approach. And I'm just spacing them out a little bit the further I go up, so that there's a little bit more light between them, because I don't want this is a darker color. Check my thing again. Yeah, there's a little bit of a shadow up here around the top of the shoulder, and then a little bit of one just down, just coming down very light, just sort of rolling over the shoulder. And then just turn into a little bit of stippling. And then just stipple down here a little bit. And then back to a bit of C in that crevice. Alright. Alright, so now we got most of it done. Let's grab... So I don't have anything to get darker than that. There is no blue cool light on this side. See if I do have a slightly darker green. I could try a really dark blue. That will cool it off though. Oh, you know what I could do, guys? I could do this dark brown, because the brown is warmer than a blue or a purple, and the warm lighting is on the left. And I'm just going to use this a little bit now. I'm just going to test out. I'm doing the letter C in 3s. Oh, that is significantly darker, so that's great. I can use the forest green again, or the grass green, I think it was, to blend in that again if it's just a little insensitive to the rest of the tones. I'm just going to grab a little bit there. I'm doing micro 3s and micro Cs, just to get a bit more definition. So now I've got the full spectrum of the lightest part of the skin tone through the mid-tone down to the shadow, and then just like the full-on blackout, which I can bring in some black at the next point. And I can actually just sort of, there's already that much texture into there. What I can sort of do is like a lazy stipple, and what it does is it only scratches the weakest points of that area. It doesn't like dig in and scratch everything, so not every dot you do works, because it hits a bit of wax, and then another bit hits a little bit of dry wax, and another bit hits a little bit of paper, and so you just get a light lazy stippling in some of those spots there, and you'll only pick up some of it. So you want to gradually, you want this to be gradual. You don't want to down here, because you've got such a strong contrasting color. You don't want to just go and erase that shape that you just built in. That's the shoulder done. Very small. We can add some adjustments later on, you know, balance out some of the tones. If I get up here, make sure that the definition is still in there. Just checking my reference as well. Yeah. Cool. All right. So if I put that down, and then I come back to the shadowed area. Now all this is in the shadow, but there's a really strong one off to the left here in the elbow, inner elbow, further down the bicep. So instead of starting off with the apple green, I am going to start off further down the line with the grass green. And I am going to do I do the shadows first? Because if you do the less shadowed area, you can sometimes lose. I'm just gonna do the shadowed area. Sorry, the more open area. What I'm saying is, like, I've put markers down to tell me where the shape of the body is. If I color over the main area, I might actually lose the shadow marks. So now I don't know where, once I've put it all that color down, that base color down, now I don't know where the shadow lines are. That's what I'm thinking of. So just think ahead. It's like when you want to crop a piece of paper and you put marks on the side of the paper, so you know where to crop it for all 3 sides, and then you cut one side off along with the marks, and now you don't know how to cut the other 2 of those sides. So when you put notes onto a page to tell you what to do with the page, and then you start applying yourself to it and you erase those marks, then you've got to fly blind a little bit. So you're just thinking about your process a little bit ahead. You'll notice as you're going slowly, you'll sort of notice if you're stepping on your own feet. Alright, so I've just given that some texture. I am going to do the bicep up the top here as well. I'm still doing the letter C backwards, or 3s and dots, and just sort of, if I see a spot that's a little highlighted, I won't just go and do a big 3 or a C over top of that. I will just do like a little dot in the middle of it just to break it up. Like as in like a little white highlighty sort of area that I missed. Just because I don't want to like go, oh look, there's a little bit of white spot there, I'll do my letter 3C or C stance technique over top of it, and then I ended up having this dark mark in the whole pattern because I've just stuck to my guns rather than adapting. Keep rotating your pencil every couple of lines or so, and that'll just keep catching the sharper or the sharpened side of the pencil. If you're getting a cramp in your hand like I am now a little bit, hold the pencil further back and then just sort of get the leverage, or just ease off on the pressure and let the pencil do the work. If you want to do this for life, you want to just bear in mind your little repetitive injuries, strain. Just adding a few more little scrubs and shapes along there. So I've actually kind of lost the definition I have in there to a degree, except that there's some really faint marks in here about where the biceps are and the muscles that run under and through that. So that's fine. I haven't really lost it too much. Now my next color is back to the dark brown, which is quite contrasting. I am going to start off at the darkest part. Same technique. Again, what I might do is just break character for a second and just sketch along that line there, because sometimes doing a textured technique where there needs to be a line of definition, you just end up struggling to actually. You're just better off drawing a straight line right through that, around that object or something. As I said earlier, when you're starting to do the 3rd layer of color or wax or something on a page, 2nd, 3rd, and so on, there's already texture on the page. So you can use what's there. So I've got this initial dark inner elbow shadow in. I can increase that shadow, but what I want to do now is just put some little textural marks along that strained muscle that he has through the middle of his upper arm, under the bicep, so that I know where it is, and then I will sit back and just check how the volume is building out, and then I'll blend it from there. So I'm still using number 3 reverse C technique, and then mixing it in with a little bit of stippling where it gets a little lighter. I mean, when I overhear someone say to someone else who's looking at my art for the first time and somebody else knows what I did to make it, and they go, yeah, and they go, oh, that looks amazing. Yeah, he drew every one of those dots. That's usually the comment. Like every dot you see on Michelangelo, he drew every single dot, every single texture into the piece, and that's why it looks the way that it looks. And I kind of like think, well, yeah, but it took a half a second to draw a dot, and I sat down for 3 hours at a time over a week and drew the whole thing. I mean, but at the same time, you have to invest blocks of time. But when you're doing body parts and that, like, it doesn't take that long. Like in the space of 10 minutes, we've done the upper arm, or 15 minutes we've done the upper arm. Like, yeah, I'm drawing every single skin pore on an entire character, but it doesn't really take that long to do. It seems a little crazy, but it doesn't take that long to do, really. And that's why I'm surrounded by frames at work. I just like donk, 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 all the way around my desk, my cubicle at work, and then on the whiteboard behind me, along that rim, that aluminium rim. Because you don't need that many markers and erasers for a whiteboard. So I just put my art there, and you end up surrounded by your art. And that's actually a very healthy and almost a necessary thing to have. I'm just doing some like wave, as in like ocean ripple in there, just to sort of get it. I'm just going to do a full-on scrub-a-dub-dub there, because it just maxes out at the bottom, and I'll bring in some black to get that happening. I want to keep adding this brown over top of the green, and I might actually bring in the green again and just try to tone down some of that highlights that you see bouncing through the arm. I want to sort of push it back up far enough, and I will bring some black into a second. Overall, it's working, but I'm looking at the real lighting. That's what I said before. I will repeat myself over and over again, because that's art, and humans are not very good at repeating successfully. And I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the species. All of you, us. There's already texture. There's texture down. There's texture down. And so when you add more to it, it will build up. Oh no, that's one truth. Yeah, just I'm talking about we can trust the real reference, trust the real reference, because it's real. Like, it's not fake lighting, it's not AI lighting, it's not. It's real. Trust it. So if it's saying go a little bit darker, then go a little bit darker. Don't veer off course. Okay, I'm gonna attack some of these dry spots, these light and dry spots, just with a little circular scrub, like a little beep, like little jump in, stab, wound, like a Spartan javelin, fighter. And just to scrub out some of those white spots, because the real reference is telling me it's not supposed to be there. Right, there's a little bit of lighting up there. We'll leave that. Won't scrub it out too much down there. This shoots up here a little bit. I can make it lighter. We're not so waxed up here that we can't add a little bit of light rendering if I have to. Overall, this compared to this is quite dark and rich, as well. It's looking a little bluish, and that's just because green grass is not as desaturated green. I could have found a more desaturated green, but it's okay. Like, if you want to get very specific about your palette and how the warm skin tones get darker and how the cool skin tones get darker, be specific. By all means, be analytical and be very specific. Like, some of the greatest film directors never know too much about what they're trying to achieve. They know everything and more than what ends up on the final cut. So it's okay to know too much about, and I say that with a grain of salt. It's okay to know too much about what you're doing and why you're doing it. If it does not paralyze you, that's the grain of salt. So if you can't do anything because you're constantly analyzing everything that you do before you do it, and you can't get a move on, you can't just draw where you're at, paint where you're at. Don't paralyze yourself because you're not doing more above and beyond. Who does more than what they're capable of doing? Do what you can do now. Don't paralyze yourself. It's not possible to do it's not possible to do what you're not capable of yet, but you will not be able to do what's impossible now in the future if you want to do what stepping stones that it takes to get there. So if you're imperfect, if you're not up to what you really want to achieve yet, you have to draw, you have to paint, and be honest about what processes are difficult for you, and look at options. Look at doing things in simpler chunks, smaller chunks, and just one little bit. Just do the eyeball. Just do the one finger. You know what I mean? So just do a patch, a square patch of rendering to practice rendering. Don't take it further than that. You know, slow down, break it down, go slower, do a small bit at a time, but be where you're at in application, because you can't get to the better stage of your artistry and your life until you've done better at what you have now. It's inevitable. You don't just jump ahead without being where you're at. So count where you're at as a blessing, because it's something that's allowing you to your imperfect state, your undeveloped state that you're in is a blessing, because it's the key to you growing onto the next stage of your artist and the next stage of your life. So forgive yourself, or just don't criticize yourself. Forgive yourself for criticizing yourself. Don't hold your imperfections against you. Just try to do the right and the good thing now. And, you know, I'll tell you what, when I first started doing this, Niels jumped on board here. Do you want to face the right direction? You want to face the right direction. When I first started doing this, what's the example? just be where you're at. Just do where you're at. Oh yeah, of course. So I'm picturing me drawing over a table with just a handful of pencils, very limited amount of colors, because that's all I could afford. And every time I did my next picture, it wasn't always the case, but most times when I did the next picture, my artwork was better. It was, and I couldn't really tell you what I was doing right. I had a sense of confidence. I had a sense of having done some very basic introductory stuff. And then the next week or the next day that I did a new portrait, I just started off as like, you know what, I'm just going to do the sketch a little cleaner next time. And then when I start off, I'm going to sharpen my pencils up and get a really like crystal clear eyeball in place. And I just slowed down and I took my breath and my breathing in time, and I got in and just took my time with the eyeball, and I did it in the same amount of time. So I basically didn't get quicker. I did more in the same time, if that makes sense. But I was also it's just this weird state of suddenly you're just doing better art. But where I found a couple of things sort of went a little sideways or backwards or wrong was just because, let's say that I did a portrait of Frodo, and then a portrait of Aragorn, and then a portrait of another character, Jake Sully from Avatar, and then I did Raphael portrait, just the face. All these are all faces mostly, or the upper body. And Raphael didn't turn out so well, and that's because I referenced someone else's art instead of referencing a figurine or a movie character or the original stuff. I referenced somebody else's art for that, and it didn't turn out well because it was a second-hand take on a second-hand take. So it was the third hand, but it's exponential. It's like you're not just doubling down on the amount of misinformation. You're exponentially, like you're tripling your, it's in ways that you just can't appreciate the result a whole lot. So I learned way back then that it's just not great to reference somebody else's art techniques, yes. The application of how I'm applying Copics and pencils here to this, yes. But to draw over top of this guy here and then to try and do it again rather than just going over a figurine, you might end up having versions of how I do this compared to the original guy that's going to sort of like skew things off a little bit. And that's, at least anyway, this is pretty real, like accurate to the original, whereas the art that I did was a very kind of different take with a lot of texture, and I picked it for a reason. But yeah, it ended up being problematic because the original art was too different. So I learnt that, and it went backwards, and that's what I had to do. I had to do this piece that didn't turn out so well because I didn't know, and the only way I could find out was by spending 9 hours on a portrait that didn't work out. And I'm happy about that now. It was kind of a bit painful at the time, but now that I know, I'm happy. And if I'm telling you, maybe you won't make that mistake, but it really is not a bad thing for you to make a mistake in your artwork. It's almost as useful to you as getting it right, because the thing is, if you just happen to draw something and you get it right, and you happen to draw something and it just keeps on turning out well, and then you go to, say, a art competition and your nerves are calm and you're very confident, and you go to draw something else and then you draw something that turns out terrible and you're disappointed with it and you're not happy, and somebody else wins the award, it's because there was something about why you were succeeding that you didn't know why you were succeeding, and it wasn't offset against a poorer practice, and now you're trying to define why it didn't turn out the way you wanted. So it's actually very valuable to you, to us, to do what we can with what we have at the time now, and note and be honest, vocalize it, say it out loud to someone. Don't complain about yourself. Just say, I didn't really enjoy this. Like, I got it done, but I didn't enjoy it. Or, you know, I think I've created art that looks cool, but it's very laborious. You know, like, I don't like the process, or maybe I just don't like the type of art because it's just, it just doesn't feel rewarding. It looks cool, but it's ultimately it's not rewarding. It's okay to be specific and obvious. Observance is what I mean to say, and considerate of yourself in the whole thing. That there may, if you're artistic, there will be a process out there for you that will help you get somewhere with it. Like, it'll help open the door. It won't make you draw, but it will actually just guide you in the right direction. A case in point, last week I said to my friend Floating Disc, who I work with, who's also a talented artist for his whole life, I said to him, when I start doing graphic novels, I was talking about this in the first stream of this series. I said that I didn't feel great about my process for doing graphic novel work. I just feel like I was trying to identify that by the time I wrote the script and I got my panel plan sorted out, and which is in the script, and that I just didn't feel right. I didn't feel good or comfortable, confident. I didn't feel like I was rubbing my hands together, looking forward to getting into the illustrative work for it. And then I was becoming sort of paralyzed or choked up with it. And it wasn't that I was creating a lot of work for myself, because if you're going to illustrate a graphic novel, it's going to be a lot of work. So why would it be worse for me if I do a lot of the writing and the script and the paneling, like the layout for and all that? Why would it be problematic for me to have that all squared away, where I just now have to focus on illustrating? And what had sort of occurred to me is that when I had created this known world with known outcomes, and or at least if I wrote a half of the script of a story and decide, okay, well, I'll illustrate that, and then I'll sort of complete the story and then sort of push the story, inch it forward like a loading bar, or a buffering sort of thing, and then I would sweep in behind that story buffering and illustrate the thing. That's the plan. But the whole time, anytime I went to illustrate anything and start to build it, I was like, I've gone half-mast on the story. I've been very meta about how it all fits together and unfolds, and I've got confidence in the way of writing, and that, you know, it needs to hit hard, and I need to make sure that some of the larger themes towards the end really work out with the protagonist, antagonist, the whole thing. But I'm gonna start illustrating and putting all this work into these scenes, but I don't feel confident that the work I'm putting in is going to make me happy or fit the story if the story is so particular about the outcomes. Like, for example, if later I decide in the second or third act that something has to have a different detail or work differently, or a culturalism, something quite universal that affects the village that my story takes place in or whatever, that I was like, you know what, I really need that as a hook. That needs to work into the story, which means I'm going to have to go back through all these panels. That might happen anyway. But this is what's occurring in my head as I'm illustrating or about to illustrate or even thumbnailing the story. It's like you have to finish the whole story and then get to illustrating, or reverse that and just go, I've got this idea for a story, and then but just generally what it is, and that I'm going to I'm going to start somewhere in the story, not necessarily the beginning, and draw what's in my head and just capture a scene out of sequence and just do it that way. So the opposite of in just building the story out based off of what you grab. The other catch, I guess, to that, the reason why I've never really done it that way, or much, is because my thinking is, well, where are you going with this? Like, if you don't have a plan, it's just anything you draw could just end up anywhere. Like, there's no plan here, and when there's no plan, you can really, really screw up a story. We've seen some of that happen in the movies, where they build something without a plan or without an agreeable board of people that are in control of the process, and then it ends up being between two places that people would rather it be, and because it's halfway between both, it's neither, and then people don't want to watch it. And it just doesn't work out for them. Nobody's happy. Can you imagine being an artist for one of those studios? You're getting paid to do something that you know just doesn't work, and they want to do it anyway. It's pretty annoying, but then we can put ourselves in this position. So just to sort of come back to about being honest about what's not working for you, it's okay to do that, and I think it's a good thing. Don't criticize yourself. Seek enjoyment in the challenge, Look for a discussion and honesty and observation about what you think is the juncture which is draining you from pursuing that. If you haven't done any art of late, but you've had the time, or you've wanted to, you sat down and it just didn't work out or go anywhere, have you kind of figured out how to be honest about that? I'm not saying own it, you're lazy. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, have you been able to put it into words? Name the demon. Because as long as the demon goes unchecked, it's like a the story of that mafia guy that just keeps getting out of, or friggin' Weinstein or whatever, just keep on like skating out of what's coming to them or what they need or the judgment. You've got to name it. That's what they're doing in the court. They're going, this is what it is. This is what happened. This is what's happening. So you got to figure out how to put words to what you're doing, and don't ever use the word lazy. Because that is more of a symptom, not a cause. You're not a bad person because you're not doing art. You're not a slacker. McFly. You're not a slacker. There is something there, and once you name it. We're not talking about a phase of life or a financial difficulty or anything like that. We're just talking about if you're like this, like me. Hey, I've got energy tonight, and I would like to be a better artist. And if there's only one thing I get to do in life, and it could be just playing video games or watching television or drinking tea and looking at the sunset, all good things. But if I really want to be an artist, I've got to swap out those other 3 things for putting the time down. When I sit down to do art and I become defeated in that moment, or I try to do something and it's just frustrating, identify what that is, name the demon. So I said the floating disc. I don't like how I've been approaching graphic novels, and it's not because it gives me a lot of work to do, because ultimately I do need to enjoy the illustrating. But I do create a lot of these panels where it's just like, well, this character needs to get to that location. So here's a panel of them, the first frame of them leaving the horse stable. Then there's them riding the horse through the street. And then there's another shot of them riding the street, so you know that there's distance to it. Then there's a shot of him parking his horse at the parking center. And then him walking to the front door of the tavern. And then there's a shot from inside the tavern looking back at him entering into the tavern. And it's just like, there's no mystery in the story. I know what it is. Okay, that's good for planning, but I kind of feel bored. I was saying to my friend, I feel a little bored and underwhelmed by what I'm doing because I've already told myself the story. And I kind of want it to become interesting, exciting, and engrossing as I do the work. Does an illustrator or a comic artist, graphic novel artist, get to do that? Or is it just the reader? Well, this is art. So let's assume that it's possible to have the same enjoyment making the comment as it is for the reader. Because it's art. Because I've heard other artists, I know the potential of them enjoying their work. Let's not assume that it's only the reader's enjoyment, after all the labor and the work's been done, that they will really get something out of the whole experience. Let's not assume that there isn't a way to do this that is enjoyable. It's something that you look forward to doing and working through. And it's not just a whole massive comic. It could just be just learning anatomy. I find once you get onto a process that really gels with your brain, and you know it's starting to like, oh wow, that looks like a face. Wow, that looks like a body that is alive and working and proportionate, and those look like muscles, and that looks like a flowing cape. That was so easy. I was just doing I figured out this thing where it lets you, do this shape and that shape, and you join them together, and the next thing is you've got Batman's. That stuff exists. That's why you have professional artists. That's why you have freelance artists. That's why you have artists that you enjoy following and looking at, because they were just like, oh, that doing these two things gets me this whole picture. I can do that. Something unlocked in their brain in the process that puts forward what you see. And yeah, weeks, months, years of experience and stick-to-ness, for sure. But that all just opens up, the long road opens up door after door because of what you've done in the present. It all just sort of unfolds, and you're too fixated on enjoying the process and building stuff from basics and that. So you're not really concerned about the amount of time it takes. If patience is an issue for you to actually, I've got my own diversity. I've got inattentive ADHD, So I will I'll deep focus and fixate on something, but I will not attend something that does not stimulate my brain. Now, I've actually taken control over that. We'll talk about that another time. I'll mix it into other conversations, just about like when you're sitting in a conference and it's all business talk, I can sit there and take it in because I've taught myself how to pay attention, focus. Later in life, I've just taught myself how to and picked up stuff from others, and like, you know, like even if you're not interested in the topic, it's good to assure the person that is talking that you're listening to them, and to be a part of their contributions and their efforts. So I'm not thinking so much about the information that they're sharing as much as I'm letting them know that I'm listening by nodding and being engaged. And you actually find out that actually converts you to be a listener and a rememberer of what they said. So that does, there's certain, I mean, that's just another thing again, whereas like I can't listen to lectures because the talking, it switches me off. It's like, okay, but what happens if you spend the whole time just reassuring the person who's talking that you're there and you're listening and you're respecting their time and their effort? And then all of a sudden you might find that you actually happen to be listening to them now, but just you came in through a different door. That's what happened to me. So I can sit in a lecture, I can sit in a business meeting, I can sit in front of somebody and make sure I give them visual cues that I'm paying attention to them, and I'm avoiding, such as, you know, fidgeting or tapping my knee or anything, like giving them the sense that I don't want to be here and them just to hurry up and so I can get out of here. Because I'm making sure I'm respecting their time and their effort, it's actually erased some of these voluntary things that an 80 person with my neuro diversity would automatically, you know, sort of fail at. Patience as well. So not being able to sit, having the world of information and rage and constant movement going on around you, and to be able to sit like some Zen master and just work on a drawn piece is kind of like, whoa, why do I have to slow down so much to do that? Like I never do art because I need moving stuff in front of me all the time. Have you tried putting on synthwave music or instrumental music or prog rock while you're drawing? I'm sure a lot of you have done that, or most of you have. What happens when you don't have music on? You automatically, sometimes you look for stimulation somewhere else other than a very slowly developing drawing. It does not move. Consider your options. Consider your strategies. If you want to become an artist, you're kind of roping in you're gonna have to rope in your brain a little bit, without limiting it creatively. And you can do that if you just, it's like there's things, little strategies and little things that you actually enjoy doing, that actually get you to be a better artist. There are same things for you as a human being. It's the same thing. It's like you improve as a human, you improve as an artist. It's that attitude of going, I want to be able to do something. I don't like doing it this way. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it to someone. They might actually go, oh, have you thought about doing it this way? Or maybe just think about like the total opposite or the reverse way of doing something, and see if that introduces an element to your way of thinking, and maybe introducing a process you might be interested in, that it might make it easier for you to digest something. Because all of a sudden lack of patience isn't really an issue anymore, because now you're engaged. You've moved past that. bring in some occlusion. A little bit more occlusion. Let's go up to a poppy red. And some more brown through the middle here. Right through the middle of that pillowy elbow pad there. Yeah, so just try to verbalize what process you don't like in a type of art. What stage, what process. Like if you're not great at sketching and drawing, you want to get good at it, but you really just want to do some color, like what I'm doing here. You know, it's really confidence boosting, just spending some time doing some coloring over somebody else's sketch, or your sketch, or a sketch of a figurine, or a sketch of a movie character, with a reference, a photo reference. Dang yeah. Boop. You love this, don't you? Smooching my hand. Whee. Hello. Hello. See if you can. They always put their middle two toe claws from the back foot right in the middle of my chest into the sternum. Solid dig. I've got so many deep cuts. Oh, there. You think I'm brushing for you? Hello there. Do you understand on the keyboard? No, that's not going to happen. She's used to getting around on my desk when there's just an iPad here and not an easel pushing the keyboard to the rim, and then 4 pencil cases, whatever, and an iPad and a stein of water. So she tries to step over the keyboard and pushes the buttons. Hello there, what's up here? You gotta clean the towel? Alright. Maybe just tackle one thing at a time. Like all I said for floating disc was I don't like how I'm when I get to illustrating a graphic novel, I don't like how I feel when I get there, and I want to enjoy the process. I don't like the process. I like writing, I like creating a story, I want to illustrate one, I want to illustrate a whole story, at least a sequence would be a good start. But I don't like spending all this time creating a plot and a lore, a world, villages and their backstories, and the protagonist backstory, and then an awesome hook and a pinch and a twist and all this other stuff. Yeah, and then trying to illustrate it while still thinking, how am I going to finish this off? It's just like, am I going to have to, all the work that I'm putting in now is just going to get shifted around and changed, and you know, the time of year, what happens if I decide to fictionalize it more and make it a little less biopic, you know? Sharpen up some Dahlia purple. And yeah, that just brought it into the light. I put way too much on my plate to really enjoy the illustrating. I put too much plot, too much writing on my plate for a graphic novel. It's a graphic novel. It has to be graphic at the end of the day, as in like visual, not violent necessarily. I've got to brown this arm pad up. It's very playful and orange. It looks like more like he's bandana than brown leather. Yeah, identifying. So we're like, okay, interesting. And then he was trying to understand, my friend was trying to understand a little bit of my perspective and like what I'm thinking of, like why am I in that position, because I do it very differently to how he does his visual storytelling. And so he's starting to get an idea because the issues that we have and the processes and our thought processes as artists, as people, are surprisingly different from one another. It's like when someone finally understands like what you're trying to say is like what you think is the problem, and you go, oh right, it's like you're in Google Earth, you're in France, like looking around in France, and then it's like, oh, you're in Madagascar. No, you're way over there. That's what you're thinking. That's where you're at. Okay, I was assuming the connection. I was drawing connections between like that you had difficulty with anatomy. No, you're fine with you're saying you like drawing anatomy, but you're having problems with the color theory. Something different. It's like, oh, you're way over there. You're thinking that kind of thing, right? Okay, I wouldn't have picked that up. And then me, I'm like, well, because I didn't automatically and simply assume what their actual the problem was. I'm like, I wasn't the solution to me was a lot clearer, a lot simpler. So I'm like, oh well, why don't you just why don't you try doing this? Why don't you do that? Because that's what I do, and it works for me. I'm doing this for a different reason, but to me it just seemed very obvious because a graphic novel, you start off with the story, or you start off with the graphic. It has to be graphic at the end of the day, and it has to have dialogue or a sequence to it that makes sense. So they both involved, but it doesn't necessarily mean the writing has to be done first. A lot of stories are written or verbalized stories of things that have already happened as well. That's why they exist, is because that's this thing that happened visually, really, graphically. Now we can talk about it. Now it's a story. We can actually put a bit more shadow on this. I'm just looking at the lighting again. So I'm just going to do some sort of like haywire-y, furry, woolly type stance work there. Because there's so much texture already, I'm just going to be bouncing around what's already there. So I just need to be a little random. Cool. While I've got black in my hand, I will use it to add a little bit of definition of this. Yeah, so I know I've recapped on the issue of the graphic novel, but my issue with it a few times now, but I just sort of like running over it, because I know that, like I said, when I told Fighting this, I think it's that there's no mystery left in. It's not that I've given myself so much work to do. It's that there's kind of little mystery left in what I'm attempting to do. It's become a little dry, and I want to sort of enjoy the emotional unfolding component of the story almost as much as a reader, and go, oh, I've got this really good idea. It's a sequence or it's a scene. I'm going to draw that, and then sort of work the story, work it. Okay, well that's got to be this would be a really good midpoint, or when they sort of get into the journey and they run into a hiccup, something goes wrong or whatever very early on, and it sets things on a different path. Delays a bit of satisfaction. Stuff getting excited about how things are unfolding as a result of the chemistry in the moment, and that's when somebody's watching or reading a story, they're trying to piece things together, they're running calculations, and then when you subvert that and you send them off on a different path, it's really interesting. When things get unimaginably worse, or something really good happens that you did not expect and couldn't see because you're trying to work out all this other stuff, it's really enjoying from the reader's point of view. But if you can sort of tap into that, at least for me, if I could tap into that a little bit more, in my process, I think I would enjoy it more, because I said, the words were, it's become a little boring. It's become a little there's a word I'm thinking of, like, where it's predictable, I think is the word I'm looking for. It's become a little predictable, and I don't want to. I want there to be some. I want to have that mystery that I have when I'm writing something for the first time, but when I'm doing the illustrating, I don't. So when I'm writing, there's little thought processes and workshops that I can put myself through in order to figure out loopholes and writing myself into a corner, which happens sometimes. So I've figured out how to work through those, and those are really exciting little workshop. Yeah, exciting is probably a bit too much of a superlative for it, but it's very rewarding, I'll say. There's a lot of wax on that elbow pad. I am having a bit of trouble with it. I think just sort of simplified shadows underneath, highlights on top. That's helping. So the way to sort of go back towards the mystery of a story unfolding before me and enjoying it similar as the writer or as a reader would, is to draw it like a reader would read, and that is to draw it as it unfolds in front of me at the time that I come up with it. And that I might go, okay, here's the other thing. So if you want to make an interesting adventure, or an action or drama or something, you need to subvert the reader's expectations. So you're giving them more than they expected. But also something often very different. You can make some things very consequential in ways that they were anticipating, so that the world has a sense of logic to it. It's like, okay, yeah, right, if he speeds, he gets picked up by the police. Okay, that's what this world's like. But then all of a sudden there's a full-on shootout, or there's a full-on, like, and it's like, what's going on now? And like, why is this so much worse than it should be? Like, nothing was really happening. And so it drags you into the story more, because you're like, he was going a bit fast, but why are the police shooting at him before he's even pulled over? When we're looking at this guy not done any, like, he's gone too fast, but that seems a bit. So like, yeah, the moment you pull things a bit harder, it gets really interesting. But as long as there is some form of basis, it's not like a crazy silly comedy world where, you know, the Three Stooges with people are just bashing each other over the head and it doesn't actually do anything. So subverting expectations of the reader is great. Sometimes you can actually have that experience while you're writing it or working on it yourself. So, for example, if it's kind of boring, you're boring yourself because someone has to go from A to B. And it's just like, yeah, I've got to draw this guy going across town. You know, I guess I just have to like research 15th century Hungary and figure out what their streets look like, you know, and get some references and some old photos and have a look around and get an idea of the architecture and build it, and then put the guy over the shoulder shot, low shot looking up of him coming down the road, you know, curve the road a little bit, make that interesting, like stylized. You know, what happens if you go, okay, this sequence is boring, But maybe I can make it like he lives in a weird part of town where he has to go down like this wooden flight of rickety old staircases down the side of a hill that's half, or like, I know if it's got to be biopic, it might have to follow some regional realisms and that, but like maybe dig into things a little bit, like see if you can push the limits. Surprise yourself, like make it interesting to draw, even though he has to go from A to B and then from B to C. Make it that his A to B gets interrupted and someone tries to rob the guy on his horse ride somewhere and it's not just a random thing, like later find out that's just there was a robber on the loose and we were trying to track him down, and it's like this guy ends up being an accidental hero, or like there's a whole bunch of other supporting material on what you can do to support the truth about a character on their journey. And how to loop it, so something they do earlier supports what they'll do later, and then when they move on from that and pick up stuff from there and go back later, there's something that happens later that might be able to utilize every other occurrence that they've touched base with some other form of like information or person or whatever. Somebody else gets looped back into their cycle of doing things, like there's this looping effect that we can talk about later when we're doing a bit more visual storytelling. That's really cool and really interesting for that, but in terms of illustrating the steps of the journey for a character and illustrating it, and as an artist, do you find that interesting? Is it interesting? Is it not interesting? Like, are you being, it's not so much being challenged, it's like, are you interested? Like, is it chemistry? You have chemistry with your own story. Because if not, it's okay to be honest about that, and you might just find another approach to it. And the approach that I sort of discovered was considering writing more from the human reactive perspective instead of the God perspective. The difference being the concept of the God perspective is the Alpha and Omega, someone who is not constrained by time, that sees the entire story and everything in front of them all pieced together and all makes sense to them, and they've got it all together before stuff even happens in the story dimension, versus the human perspective or the character perspective, which is someone who is in the world and who can't see all of time, who knows something about the past. They have ideas about what will happen in the future, and they're either reacting to things that are happening to them in the time, or they're trying to be responsible with things that are happening to at the present time for the sake of their future, and so writing from the human character perspective as opposed to the all-knowing holistic completionist type writing point of view is a way to engage with both my humanity and also with the the interesting component of a story unfolding in front of me. I don't know if I've got cats fighting or if I've got someone here. Hold on. Okay. No, it's just Chewy. Chewy's the other cat. When he comes back in, when Chewy comes in, I'll pick him up and I'll show you. He's the 1-year-old. He's 5.7 kilos. Miel, I showed you before, is 4.3 kilos. So he's bigger, younger, bigger, and he gets to a point where he goes bat cat crazy. And yeah, I think he was just running into the green screen. Okay, I'm gonna leave the arm pad for a second just because I'm trying to understand a little bit more about what the lighting of it, and just like how correct it is, or if it needs to be adjusted. I'm just gonna put in a couple of stretch marks here. Just kind of work with some of the grizzly weird things that I've sort of put in, just to add some sort of texture to it, because at the moment it's just don't want it looking impressionistic and like just the mixture of colors and shapes and brush strokes and stuff. I don't want that. I want it to have a materialistic thing going on, like it's made out of material that knows what it's doing in life. And a little bit of definition also goes a long way. Just gotta look at line weights and make sure that I kind of like fade it off and thin it out towards the light, or else it's going to look cell shaded. Okay, yeah, no, so once I do the forearm there, I'm going to get a much better idea of the composition. So I want to come back to our green apple. So we've just passed the 3-hour mark. I'm going to go a bit longer. Each of the streams so far for this traditional fan art series has been around 3.5 hours, even though I recommend 3-hour session for you. In general, you can start to sort of drift off at this stage. If you're getting started, or for a long period of time, the 3-hour work blocks are kind of hard to work past sometimes. I mean, if you're enjoying the process, time doesn't really come into it. I think the body gives up before the mind does. I think the body just goes, I'm hungry, or your eyes start crusting over, you're tired, or you start to feel queasy or something because you haven't been outside. So usually the body gives up. When your process is good, you enjoy the process, no real roadblocks, it's just doing what you need, what you enjoy, what you want to sort of get it out and about. On your page there, yeah, the body gives up. While I'm at this, I should just put some texture into the hand. So I'm just doing number 3s up here because it's just a little. Because I noticed that the green apple is very kind of light. So all I'm really doing is just putting texture into the page. So when I come along with the shadow tone, I will be mixing the darker shades in with the debossing of this green apple. So even though you can't really see it in terms of the tonality and the shade, it will interact with every other color I put on there afterwards. And then when I add that texture in with the darker colors on top of that, again, you just end up with something that is really textural and very much like a real boy, a real character. I am getting a little tired in the head, in the eyes, I can feel it. It's coming up to 9:30 p.m. on Friday night. I do not want to be anywhere else. Unless I get a surprise call to make a trip to the bus station. I will see out this part unless I get that call. If that happens, we'll have to hang this up and come back tomorrow. I've got my phone on for travel notifications. Putting some more of that texture in up there. Adding a little bit of definition to his chunky green fingers. Cool. Okay, that's working. Check my reference again. Oh, yep, there's a little bit of... It gets a bit darker in a couple places. There's a little bit more rending around here, so I can just do just some little 3s and C's and dots into that space a little bit more, and just scratch in a bit more of that texture, render it out coming through. There's a bit more blue up there as well. It's actually his arms catching the blue up there, so I'm gonna bring that in a second. Yep, that actually goes further than I had thought originally. Cool. That one's actually supposed to be a little less than what I put in. We'll fix that. And there is some shadowing here. A bit more under that wrist guard, or what do you call it? Wristband. Let's get onto that blue now. Just looking at I'm roughly going to go with a base. I'm not really going to sharpen this. I'm just going to, because there's some texture in the paper already, I'm just going to, it'll catch one of the sides of it. I'm just going to use the overall sort of shading quality of this blue, not so much the detail work. Just to sort of etch in that tone, that cool tone. I'm going to go a little bit lighter because that wasn't as effective as I wanted. Okay, cool. It's a little higher contrast on the screen that you're looking at than what I can, but than what I'm looking at. But it's on par. It needs to be darker in the crevices. Before that I do that, I'm going to do a little bit of this Karen Dutch color here, this murky sort of. I'm going to just add a bit of that. It's like a baby poo yellowy green color. Half yellow, half milk solids, half green solids. Oop, that one's bending. Okay, bit of yellow in there from that side of the scene, the warm lights on the left of us. Just sort of playing around with the texture that's already in there. Scratch that up. Cool. I just wanted to add some more to the light side before I go to the darker side. Hello, Meowcat. You're back again. What's this? Episode number 3 for you? 4? I think it's 4 now. 4 or 5. 4 or 5 pats. 1 not. I think this is both. This is where I get patted, but also biscuits, please. Bickies. Bickies. Trying to pass that through your fluffy pants. Hello. Hello. Can't see my reference. Can't see my drawing, my screen. It does get pretty dark up here. I can remember that much. Okay, we're back. Got to be careful not to lean my hand on the drawing too much either, because that will. Wax is pretty good. Wax is pretty versatile, but you don't want to test your luck as well. Graphite definitely comes off the page. My way through the anatomy here, looking at the reference. Just using that dark brown to do the shadows up here at the moment, just because it's a little bit more in line with the green than the purple is for this side. I might introduce some Dahlia purple down here though. On the cooler side. Okay. Dahlia might be just a little a little darker. And it'll add a little bit of color in the shadow there. I can hit it with the black, at the farthest point of that whole section, eventually. Got some relatively dark edging there, so I'll just come back to this forest or green grass and sharpen that up a little bit. And then just smooth out some of that a little bit in the green apple. That purple is just, you know, brown, it's just a little bit. A little bit contrasting, a little sharp. Alright, that's kind of done it. That's kind of built it out enough, I think. The print line for the sketch is just a little visible there as well. It's just a little, like this little pixelated sort of line. Just work that out of it. that fan that's kind of keeping me cool. Just give that a little hit there. So we're just about done the entire top section of Michelangelo, excluding the hand there needs to be balanced out a bit, but we'll go back over the whole thing and just adjust anything that looks a little out of place. Yeah, just a tiny bit of black at the farthest point. Yeah. Just to get that to really bite down. Woo! Oh yeah, there was a little bit of steel on the little couple of steel bolts. I think I can sharpen on the belt there. I can sharpen my white up, but I think what I might have to do is I don't know. I might have to just do a little bit of white and then a little bit of black underneath. But it might be a little bit too contrasting for it to look like steel. It might look like... And I'm going to have a bit of trouble getting that white down as well. And there is 2 bolts on the end of this up here. Might leave it off that other area there. I'm not going to try and put it in. Getting close to Warhammer scale. Okay, we'll just run with that for now. I thought I said something before I was going to check. Oh, I think I was just doing the forearm and then the black. Was there anything else I need to look at? No, I don't know. I don't know. Lost any other sort of train of thought or distraction. That's alright, we'll just do what's in front of us. Sienna, a bit of yellow ochre, and then I might come down to some this is just beige. Close out some of those we call it the little folds in the leather there. I feel my eyes twitching now, starting to fade. Diminishing returns. If you were a kid who just didn't want to go to sleep at the end of the night, back in the day, if you figure out how to put your attention to some good use in the art arena, can kind of satisfy that insatiability by, you know, staying up late doing art instead of becoming a little, what's the word, idle minds can be a dangerous thing. You end up doing stuff you wouldn't do because you lose a bit of direction. So you don't want to go to sleep, but you got no direction. So actually learning art stage to stage, developing the parts that the parts that you're struggling to get stimulated on. Develop those bits, open up your potential a little bit, re-engage your passion, figuring out what your roadblocks are. Just doing like a scrubbing technique, which is just standard old school shading, because I'm kind of like polishing the leather, so I'm just going backwards and forwards on it. Doesn't need to be anything other than that. Karen Dutch there. Just reducing that area. Alright, let's move with that until we can add a bit more compositional support up on the hand. I'm going to bring in, before I go too darker on the hand, I'm going to bring in my yellows again. And up here around the top of the hand there, I've got a little bit of the original sketch, which is just a little unwanted. And I don't want to go too hard on this, the beige on this, because his skin tone is green, but there is a highlight here. So I'm going to get sort of like the glistening part of that, and just sort of stipple and press in and push to get some highlight out of the beige pencil, because it's getting a little stubborn with this much wax on the page now in some of these spots. My phone is reminding me that I'm getting diminishing return. Hey, you know what? You just go to bed. No. Not until I've got what I want. You will be amazed at what artistic development or personal development, or both, will do, or personal development as a result of artistic development will do for you. Your mind. I do tell you, it does fulfilling and functional and enabling and self-believing sort of, and a whole bunch of things for me, that as a result of going, hey, I squared away this piece, I finished that piece, I finally did that, and I learnt that, and I did that really well, and I learnt not to do this again, like all this stuff, as a result of doing pieces of art that put me just in a generally better mood about life. Like I would recommend the idea. What am I saying? I'm going to put words to something while drawing at the same time. Yeah, I'm getting tired. I can't even finish the sentence. That's what I was going to say. I can recommend seeking that you need to produce something in order to get the feeling of fulfillment. And yeah, I found, I mentioned this I think in the first stream as well, I think it was, right in a second. The difference between consuming something that makes you happy versus producing something that makes you happy is vastly different. So like when you see someone get up and receive an award for their acting or their producing or their directing or editing skills, it's kind of a world. It gets the attention of the world, and it's such a gratifying and validating thing for the recipient, right? Have you noticed that nobody goes up on stage who says, I just ate a tub of Nutella, or I just listened to 500 albums, and like they're not. I'm not talking about the award. I'm just talking about I think when someone gets an award for something, for producing something, for making content, for creating art, the general view and perspective of that is surrounding fulfillment. It's like somebody has like poured this thing out and done such an amazing job at it that we're taking a moment to think about that and acknowledge the achievement of that, but the fulfillment of that, and the artistry and the person working through so much in order to do that. As a it's not the award itself, it's what that represents. Plenty of artists and actors and that and filmmakers and that who don't get awards that were just very good as well, and like unfortunately we suffer a bit from elitism in our society where somebody has to be the best and be the most awarded, even though two completely different genres have got nothing to do with one another and you shouldn't compete and stuff. But just putting all that stuff aside, the reason why somebody doesn't get up on stage and us have that same identification of someone having truly been fulfilled because they listen to 500 albums on Spotify or something is because the difference is that somebody produced the music and somebody consumed the music, and the person gets awarded for producing the music, and we all sit back and recognize that and connect with it and think about like what they've done, and aspire, and other artists aspire to. It's a big deal on the point of fulfillment. Nobody sort of you don't get that same sense of, the society just doesn't have that communal effect of fulfillment from consumption. Like a chef, how we view and respect and appreciate, like, can respect the ability of a chef versus somebody who ate 10 of that chef's meals in one night. You know, it's a very, very different perspective. Like, in terms of fulfillment, somebody's being filled, but the other person produced the content, and we acknowledge and respect the person who produced the content, not the person who consumed all that content. That's the difference. So what I'm saying here is that it's true that there is a difference between fulfillment in producing something and consuming something. Something that you can consume influences your feelings, but it doesn't change your heart. It doesn't change your mind. If anything, it adds more. It adds more distraction or obstacle or burden or physical process. Like, you eat a whole bunch of, like me, you eat 4 pizzas, two and a half pizzas in one weekend. You've got a load on your mind, and I tell you what, it is a load of. Not to say the pizza, I love it, but I'm just saying, if I actually made those instead of buying them, I would have a sense of fulfillment of being a chef-a-rooney on my own property, at least. Excuse me. Being a brewer as opposed to a drinker, big difference. I like being able to say I'm a brewer. I like being able to know the technicalities of that whole process and how that fits together, and I can make myself any brew of beverage that suits me. When I'm set up again, I'm not set up for it right now. And I like having that skill. The fulfillment that you get from the ability to produce something is... there's something about it. There's something about it for humanity. Don't ignore it. Don't ignore what is fundamentally part of your system. Make literally anything. It doesn't, you don't have, like, just because, trust me, you don't have to do something competitive. You don't have to win an award. That's the part why I want to put the awards part of things aside. You don't have to win an award for doing any of that stuff. You can just go, oh, I felt so good about making my lunch than buying it, or I felt so good about constructing something, producing something. Like, it's particularly the difference between, like, buying pizza and making it. Just try to do the make it, something like, try to find ways to make something and introduce that as part of your life. Like, make that become a maker. The fulfillment associated with that is a powerful thing. It is a bit tiring. It is more tiring. It's like there's a more of a cost that's associated with it. Makes us, whereas, like, when you buy something or you just consume something, the enjoyment is uninhibited effort. Really, like, there's no real. Yeah, it's a backwards complex, right? It's you produce something, it costs you something. There's a consequence, But the consequence is good. You suddenly made something and you've built into yourself the idea of becoming fulfilled by producing something as opposed to becoming fulfilled by consuming. Because I found a number of times for me as well, like if I'm just consuming lots and lots of art on Instagram, I just feel empty because I'm not a part of it. But then if I spend 5 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours, 40 hours doing something, it just only makes one post, the artwork itself and doing it is more fulfilling doing that artwork than it is consuming days and weeks or the same hourly amount as just looking at art. So you look at 40 hours of art over the next 2 weeks and produce 40 hours of art over the next 2 weeks and see which one makes you feel better. The way that we are set up at the moment is that you will inevitably see stuff in your life anyway. Like you'll wake up, you'll check the news, or somebody will go, hey, look at this, or somebody might go, hey, this is really cool, I thought you might like it might be influential. I was talking to Floating Disc about the challenge of environmental drawing. So like if I go, cool, well, what's the next stage for me on graphic novels? If I want to draw a scene, then and just get into it rather than having to plot the whole thing out all the time and sort of burning myself out on that, then I kind of have to be prepared to draw a lot of environments. And so he's like, later on, he was just thinking, he's like, yeah, it's like, I get that, you know, like there's some things to break that down and make it a bit easier. You've got your perspective guide in just as a process, but you do have your perspective tool in Procreate, for example, or a ruler that you can pivot on your page to draw that perspective into it. There's things that can make that easier, but then you can also reference real cities. You can sketch over a city from a different perspective, and then you can just go and edit it so it looks like a dystopian future or whatever. There's a few things that can get you started in that space, but then he goes and sends me an artist he came across recently who does a lot of urban stuff and a lot of lines, like way more lines than I would do in a scene on a urban. So there's tons and tons and tons of buildings, but then excess amounts of lines. Like it's almost like abstract, but it's also like engineering, like it's very civil at the same. Yeah, it's a heavy mix of a few things. And so you end up with stuff in front of you anyway. But this is the kind of like the way I look at the kind of here's the way I kind of look at consumption. If I tell you get good, 2 words with a meaning behind it, how long does it take you to, so you consume those words, how long does it take you to fulfill those words? It could take a lifetime to get good at something. And that's the difference between consumption and production, is that you don't need to consume a lot in order to get an idea of what you could be doing to find real fulfillment in producing something. Get good. Okay, well, you know, or if I say, hey, I want to draw characters. How do I do that? Start with anatomy. 3 words. We'll see you in 3 years. We'll see you in 6 months of condensed study time. You know, find a way to enjoy the process, but you don't need to consume a lot to get a direction in life. You love your neighbor as yourself. Hey, spend the rest of your life doing that sentence. Not easy. You don't need to consume a lot to find fulfillment in doing what is producing the right kind of artistry, the right kind of life. There is a lot to information, and the actions that require to see that through is extensive. You know, you want to do a graphic novel, environmental drawing, character art, story, script writing, you know, like graphic novelist. Consume the idea of that, okay, but you need to produce a lot of skills, so on, before you can do that. Or you don't have to start when you're really good. You can start when you're bad, and so you should. It's just once you want to get to the point that you're really excited about the results, and that, well, that's going to be further down the road. So you don't actually need to consume a lot to get the idea of how much you need to produce. Very different. Separate the two. Beware of what the two things are happening, that are happening. Like if I do a tutorial, if David Finch does a tutorial, and that the information that occurs in that tutorial can actually take you. I watched some of his tutorials over and over again to get it into my head, and then later on I come back to it once I think feel like I've mastered it or something, and I go back to it and look at it again and go, actually I've forgot something, or there is something more there I could sort of do or figure out, or that's helpful, or now I can learn it a bit better because I've built some other fundamentals into place that I feel a bit more confident with. That's looking okay for now. I might need more finish off the legs, which we could probably do. They're quite large. You could probably do it in one more sitting. The legs are large, but we seem to get through the skin tone pretty quickly with that skin tone stance. Oh, hey guys, I got a message, a phone here. One sec. Alright, all good. Now I just got the call. My text messages didn't come through even though I had them. Oh, you know why? Because at 9:45 or whatever, my don't disturb thing kicks in. Here's also that environmental art that it is. It's wild. Paper blue net. That's what my friend sent me. It's like, oh, if you're working on perspective-based environmental drawing, this guy's just gone nuts with. It's like he's used the perspective tool to achieve everything and more. It's like there's a lot of detail in there. as well. It's not strictly limited to the perspective itself, but it is an end. There's a bit of lighting in there. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But it just goes like, here's a guy that's gone way past. He's subverted your expectations by doing like twice as much lines. Probably not the kind of detail that I'm in. Too much other line. I don't know if that's going to become something else, or if that's it. Like, if that's the idea is. I also don't know if I'm looking at a reflection, or if I'm midway up skyscrapers or whatever. But, I mean, it's interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, but I just got a call anyway, because my Don't Disturb was on at 9:45 for sleep time. So I'll finish up now anyway, because at any point that bus is going to get to what do you call it, a Hilldale thing, or once they point past the point of no return, there's no stopping the 88 miles per hour thing. Cool, guys. Well, this was episode 3 of traditional fan art, and you can apply this same technique to not fan art. It's just that the fan art component of it, obviously it looks like a Ninja Turtle, but it doesn't put any sort of pressure or focus on the sketching phase, which it still does. Sketching a character you're a fan of is still fan art, but if you really are mostly interested in the results, the coloring phase of it, obviously you don't really need to spend time on the, if you just want to get the character onto the paper, you can get that sketch on there and start coloring. So there it is. I will be back. I've got family on Sunday, which is 2 days, so I still have tomorrow morning and then tomorrow night to hang out, and then Sunday night to hang out if I want to as well. So I'll pick a day that my voice gets a little bit sore doing this sometimes, and I might need to add a little bit of space between the next stream, and we should be able to finish off the legs in the next sitting anyway. So do a round of quality pass. All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging and lurking and watching. There'll be more of this and also other stuff: visual storytelling, digital inking, penciling, anatomy, gestural studies, character design, graphic novels, and so forth. I'm doing it for life, so I'm going to share it on here. It'll unfold. Cool. Alright. Well, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you real soon. Love and peace. Be creative. Find your fulfillment through producing something, and stay away from toxicity. Bye now.